Chapter 1620. In times of invasion and defense, people could often unleash their maximum strength. The battle to annihilate the soul race was bound to be a gory one. Even if Long Yu, a 7th-rank Great Dominator, participated, he would not be able to play a decisive role. Also, the human race, the demon race, and the wine race had established a great advantage. There was no need for Long Yu to get involved. Bringing the Saint Emperor, Red Oriole, and Moon Song with him, Long Yu left the battlefield of the alien races near the border of the soul race and moved toward the demon race's territory. In this battle to annihilate the soul race, the human race and the demon race have basically sent out all their elites except for the experts guarding Qi. We can take care of things after we return to the demon race's territory. Maybe some alien races will sneak into the human race's territory and cause damage. Red Oriole smiled. Of course, the most important thing is to go back to the Blood Demon Galaxy. I haven't been back for a long time. My father will be very happy if I bring you back. Red Oriole had been away from her hometown for a long time. Her family would certainly miss her. Besides, when she returned, Red Oriole had already become a demigod, which would definitely surprise her parents, not to mention that Long Yu was carrying the remains of the small worlds of 6 demigods of the soul race. Since Long Yu had made the greatest contribution in the battle to annihilate the soul race, the remains of the small worlds of the 6 demigods of the soul race were all given to Long Yu by the 3 veteran demigods as a reward. Long Yu had risked his life in the soul race's territory, but he had only managed to obtain 8 divine character essences and absolute beginning essences. But in the remains of the small worlds of the 6 demigods, there were at least 20 divine character essences and absolute beginning essence. They were very valuable. The absolute beginning essence that was found was naturally for the Saint Emperor, Red Oriole, and Moon Song. As for the other divine character essences, they were gifts that Long Yu planned to give to the Blood Demon race. In any case, the Blood Demon clan was his woman's race. If the overall capability of the Blood Demon clan grew stronger, it would be in Long Yu's favor. As it happened, the annihilation of the Soul Clan had taken place. After they occupied some of the territories of the Soul Clan, he would have to send someone to take over and guard them. The more experts there were in the Blood Demon clan, the more clansmen would be sent there. It was even possible that another force similar to the Blood Demon Galaxy would be established. As the Blood Demon Galaxy, one of the 248 galaxies of the demon race, the influence of the entire Blood Demon clan was enormous. In the entire demon race, the Blood Demon clan was a giant and a powerful being that ruled over a region. If Long Yu had followed Red Oriole back to the Blood Demon Galaxy before he went to the Eroding Moon Ancient Domain, he would certainly have been despised by the Blood Demon clan. But right now, nobody was qualified to despise Long Yu anymore. Red Oriole's trip to the Blood Demon Galaxy with Long Yu was sort of a family visit. It was also the first time that Red Oriole had brought Long Yu back and introduced him to other members of her clan. Before, Xue Luo, the commander of the Emperor, was the only one who knew him. Of course, Xue Luo was already the commander of the Dominator's army right now, and he was no longer the same person as before. Long Yu remembered that before he met Red Oriole, he had known Red Lord, the young master of the Blood Demon clan. It was a pity that the boy's talent in martial arts was not as good as Red Oriole's, and he failed to follow Long Yu and his sister to the Demigods College. It had been a long time since they last met. Back on the King Killer planet, Red Lord had sacrificed a lot to protect Long Yu. He had even made enemies of the Golden Flood Dragon Demon clan. Therefore, Long Yu quite appreciated Red Lord. At the very least, he considered him a friend. The Saint Emperor and Moon Song, on the other hand, had nothing to do for now. So, they went to the Blood Demon Galaxy with Long Yu and Red Oriole. However, when it came to the official visit to the family of the Blood Demon clan, the Saint Emperor and Moon Song did not bother to follow them. They planned to visit some of the tourist attractions in the Blood Demon Galaxy and consolidate their strength after they advanced into the demigod level. During the battle against the demigods of the Soul Clan, the new demigods all felt that they were not strong enough. If it were not for the influence of Long Yu's star branding pattern, they would not have been able to kill a Soul Clan demigod even if the 8 of them joined hands. It was a great blow to them. Before they became demigods, demigods were the strongest beings in their eyes. If they could make a breakthrough, they would be able to step on the peak. But it seemed that they were far from being able to do that. They still needed to improve the density of their strength. Their congenital techniques were not fully deified, their ancient god brain regions were not opened, and they had not practiced the forbidden techniques of the ancient gods. Even their warriors were far from the best. They only had one divine quality absolute beginning weapon, even if it had been awakened to the 12th level, could only be regarded as mediocre among the experts of the demigod level. Besides, they also knew that Long Yu's combat ability was not limited to those aspects. There were also divine pills and special pills. The octagonal bloodline alone could increase Long Yu's basic strength by 8 times. Although the competition among the experts of the demigod level was basically based on the density of their strength, the stronger their basic strength was, the more terrifying it would be when the density of their strength was the same. By then, Long Yu's basic strength would definitely be much higher than that of regular demigods. If his strength density caught up, it was even possible that he would become one of the strongest experts in this space zone. It must be noted that Long Yu had surpassed some of the experts of the demigod level in every aspect. When he officially became a demigod, how could he be weaker than regular demigods? That was why the Saint Emperor and Moon Song felt a sense of urgency. Although they had become demigods earlier than Long Yu, their strength would probably be surpassed by Long Yu very soon. Not long after, Long Yu and the other 3 returned to the territory of the demon race. As for Frost and Imperial Wind, they did not participate in the annihilation of the soul race. After all, they were only new demigods. It was very easy for them to be injured in such a battle, which would be a great loss for the human race and the demon race. Therefore, they were sent back to the territory of the human race to guard it. After all, they were all members of the human race. 3 days passed. Long Yu and the others arrived at the Blood Demon Galaxy in the center of the demon race's territory through the teleportation array. This galaxy was entirely blood-red. Most of the divine text sources were blood-red. Among them, there were blood-red divine texts of the origin level, as well as some derivative divine texts that were similar to the power of the metal element. In the entire Blood Demon Galaxy, there were 6 large cultivation planets. However, of the 6, only one was the real center of the galaxy. Its scale was similar to the largest cultivation planet that Long Yu had seen in the territory of the Soul Race. However, in the territory of the Soul Race, there were at least a few such large cultivation planets in each galaxy. It was clear that the foundation of the demon race was much weaker than that of the Soul Race. If not for the opportunity that Long Yu had disrupted the Soul Race's territory, the overall outbreak of the eroding Moon Ancient region, and the alliance with the Wine Clan, even if the human race and the demon race worked together, they would not be able to do anything to the Soul Race. Moreover, the annihilation of the Soul Race this time had borrowed the strength of the Ice God Clan and the Desolate God Clan. Of course, there was no alliance between the human race, the demon race, the Ice God Clan, and the Desolate God Clan. Both parties had the same goal, which was to expand the territory of their own race and occupy the territory of the Soul Race. The annihilation of the Soul Race was initiated by the human race and the demon race. The Ice God Clan and the Desolate God Clan were only taking advantage of the situation. Besides, it was possible that the human race and the demon race would fight against the Ice God Clan and the Desolate God Clan in the future. Nobody could predict that. After all, the war would not be over in a few years. It was definitely not an easy task to annihilate a race that was already very strong. Also, even if the war was fought to the end, the Soul Race would not be annihilated easily. They would probably retract their forces and defend themselves within a certain range of the galaxy to preserve their last living space. It was very difficult to truly annihilate a race. Of course, the goal of the human race, the demon race, and the Wine clan was not to annihilate the entire race. Their main goal was to take over the territory first. That way, they would have more room for development. As long as the Soul race did not rise up, they would be able to annihilate the Soul race one day. Blood Demon Galaxy, long time no see. Standing on the planet of the Blood Demon Galaxy, the largest training planet in the entire galaxy, Red Oriole stretched her back happily. Her alluring body was fully displayed, attracting the attention of many passers-by. Long Yu walked out of the teleportation array and held her slender waist. Then, they stepped onto the street of the Blood Demon Imperial City, the largest city on the planet of the Blood Demon Galaxy. In the Blood Demon Imperial City, basically, only half of the residents were Blood Demon clansmen. The other half were demonic cultivators of other races from other places. There were also a small number of humans. However, in the Blood Demon Imperial City, humans were basically ostracized. Although human beings and demons had been allies for a long time, they still had different cultures and living environment. It was not easy for them to be completely integrated. If regular female cultivators of the Blood Demon clan were not interested in male human cultivators, it would be impossible for Red Oriole, as the princess of the Blood Demon clan, to fall in love with Long Yu. It was a pity that such a thing had happened in the end, and it turned out that Red Oriole had good eyes. If it had not been for Long Yu, even if Red Oriole had been admitted to the Demigod College, she would not have been able to step into the demigod level so early. Therefore, Red Oriole was quite proud of her foresight. Let's go. Let's meet my father and the rest of them. Red Oriole stayed in Long Yu's arms with a smile and walked to the palace of the Blood Demon Imperial City gently. She had returned at this moment because she felt that it was the right time. If they had been in the Corroding Moon Ancient Domain, they might have had a disagreement. After they left the Corroding Moon Ancient Domain, it had been a period of intense training, and she had no time to return. Now that she finally had some time to relax, she seized the time to settle the matter first. Chapter 16:21. The Saint Emperor and Moon Song had already separated from the two of them. Long Yu and Red Oriole walked straight toward the palace of the Blood Demon Imperial City. The news that Red Oriole, the princess of the Blood Demon clan, had run away with a young man of the human race had long been a hot topic in the entire Blood Demon galaxy. Now that Red Oriole had finally returned, it was a big piece of news. Those from the demon race or human race that could come to the Blood Demon Imperial City could definitely be considered as experts. Even sovereign realm cultivators could be seen everywhere. Half of these cultivators were members of the Blood Demon clan. Naturally, they recognized Red Oriole immediately. However, with the identity of these cultivators, they were not qualified to talk to or block the way. They could only wait until the two of them left before they started discussing. Isn't that Princess Red Oriole? She's finally back after running away for so long. Shoo! Didn't you feel her aura? Although she seems to have concealed her aura, her cultivation level seems to have far surpassed what it used to be. She's even stronger than me. What? You're a 7th-rank Great Dominator expert, but the princess is stronger than you. Is she already a demigod? It's not that easy to break through to the demigod level. Although a lot of new demigods have been brought to the Eroding Moon Ancient Territory this time, the princess might just be one of them. The possibility is not high. Everyone was discussing. None of them knew that Red Oriole had really stepped into the demigod level. The news about demigods was not something that ordinary cultivators could learn. If it were a normal situation, and it took a long time for a demigod to be born, the news about the demigod would probably spread throughout the demon race and the human race's territory. That would not be surprising. But now there were too many new demigods, and the annihilation war against the soul race was about to begin. Certain news would not reach the ears of ordinary cultivators so quickly. After all, according to Long Yu's previous experience, he could not be sure if there were aliens lurking in the human race or the demon race's territory to gather information. Not just ordinary cultivators, even the royal family of the Blood Demon clan did not know some of the recent strategic news. More importantly, although the overall capability of the Blood Demon clan was not bad, there was not a single demigod among them. It was safe to say that Red Oriole was the first demigod expert of the Demon clan. Therefore, the return of Long Yu and Red Oriole did not bring any shocking news, such as Red Oriole had already become a demigod, Long Yu had made great contributions in the Eclipse Moon ancient domain, and he even led the annihilation of the soul race. Nobody on the planet, or rather, the entire Blood Demon galaxy, knew the news. It could be said that Long Yu and Red Oriole had stealthily returned. After all, they hadn't been given much time. In any case, the two of them were already strong enough. No matter what Long Yu's identity and position was, as long as Red Oriole stepped into the level of demigod, her actions and choices would be unchangeable. Even her parents would not be able to influence her decisions. They had not returned before because they were afraid that they would be opposed. After all, in the culture and history of the Blood Demon clan, human beings were not to be trifled with. Intermarriage had never happened in the royal family of the Blood Demon clan. Everything else aside, the royal family had the purest bloodline in the Blood Demon clan. Once they intermarried with human beings, their descendants would no longer be the royal family of the Blood Demon clan. We're here. Very soon, Long Yu and Red Oriole arrived at the royal palace of the royal family of the Blood Demon clan hand in hand. It was a magnificent, crimson palace. For regular cultivators, it might be an enormous palace that they would never be able to enter in their entire life. But in Long Yu's eyes, such a palace was not a big deal at all. It must be noted that he had seen countless palaces of alien clans and the truly magnificent buildings in the Eclipse Moon ancient domain. Right now, such a crimson royal palace of the Blood Demon clan could not affect Long Yu at all in terms of aura. Let's go. The royal palace was guarded by the experts of the Blood Demon clan. However, when they saw that Princess Red Oriole of the Blood Demon clan had come over, they merely glanced at the badge symbolically and allowed her to lead Long Yu into the royal palace. After the two of them entered, the experts of the Blood Demon clan who were guarding the royal palace could not help but talk to each other. Is that the man that Her Highness has chosen? He is indeed a human, just like the rumors say. However, even if he is a human, he is not an ordinary human being. Although he has concealed his cultivation, he is certainly stronger than us. Even if he is stronger than us, so what? That is Her Highness. It is said that His Majesty has been very troubled by the matter. Now that he has finally brought it back, it seems that there will be big news soon. Why do we care so much? After all, with our level, we can't see what is about to happen. Speaking of which, Her Highness is truly beautiful. If I can marry Her Highness, I will have no regrets in my life. You? He. Even so many young masters of the ancient clans have failed to woo Her Highness. People like us should stop thinking nonsense and focus on guarding the gate of the royal palace. Do you think it's really a good idea for us to come in while concealing our cultivation? Red Oriole thought rather mischievously. After all, the information about her and Long Yu was only spread among the demigods in the Demigods College. Nobody in the territory of human beings and demons would know about it. If they chose to conceal their cultivation, nobody would be able to tell that they were cultivators. It doesn't matter. Do whatever you want. Long Yu smiled. He did not think that Red Oriole's suggestion was unacceptable. It was a good opportunity for him to see the real situation of the Blood Demon clan. If Red Oriole had not concealed her cultivation, she would have caused a sensation on the entire Blood Demon planet. Then let's go. Remember to behave yourself later. I will reward you well tonight." Holding Long Yu's arm, Red Oriole put on a particularly charming smile. Long Yu almost could not hold it in anymore. It was a pity that it was not the time to be impulsive. He could only hold it back for now. "I'll deal with you tonight," Long Yu declared fiercely. Very soon, the two of them walked through the long front hall. When they reached the center of the royal palace of the Blood Demon clan, a group of people came to report that the Emperor of the Blood Demon clan was waiting for them in the main hall and that they should hurry over. The guards of the Blood Demon clan who came to report the news were all looking at Long Yu with hatred in their eyes. It was obvious that they were very dissatisfied that Long Yu had stolen the princess of their dreams. However, Long Yu completely ignored the hostile eyes. On the contrary, he discovered that these people's eyes were filled with gloating expressions. This caused Long Yu's heart to tremble. From the looks of it, the Blood Demon clan's emperor had prepared some good stuff for him. He just didn't know how they were going to deal with him. Long Yu shook his head and did not think too much about it. In any case, in such a place, he and Red Oriole did not need to be scared. "Got it. Lead the way," Red Oriole said to the guards of the Blood Demon clan calmly. Then, she followed the guards and walked toward the main hall of the royal palace of the Blood Demon clan together with Long Yu. In Red Oriole's memory, the main hall of the royal palace of the Blood Demon clan had always been a place where serious business was discussed. If they had been welcoming her, they would not have chosen the main hall to welcome her. Therefore, Red Oriole had guessed that her father had made certain arrangements because he was dissatisfied with Long Yu's identity as a human being. However, she did not think too much of it and simply followed Long Yu forward. He had chosen this moment to come back. Even if Red Oriole was not a demigod, Long Yu alone was more than enough to destroy the entire galaxy of the Blood Demon clan. Nobody would be able to stop him. Of course, it was possible that Red Oriole's father did not only care about capability but also bloodline. However, Red Oriole had already forgotten about that when she chose Long Yu. After going through so many things with Long Yu, it was absolutely impossible for Red Oriole to give up on Long Yu. As for accepting other young men of the Blood Demon clan, it was absolutely impossible. Led by the guards of the Blood Demon clan, the two of them soon reached the gate of the main hall of the royal palace of the Blood Demon clan. "Your Highness, please come in." The guards stayed outside and did not go in. Long Yu narrowed his eyes. Although he was only at the gate with his superior senses, he had already discovered that the main hall was packed with experts. Not long ago, when Long Yu was plundering the cultivation planets in the territory of the Soul Clan, he did not notice that there were so many experts on the cultivation planet. There were even hundreds of 7th-level Great Lords in the main hall. Among the 7th-level Great Lords, some were experts of the older generation of the Blood Demon clan, and some were geniuses of the younger generation of the Blood Demon clan. It was very likely that they had gathered in the main hall after hearing that Red Oriole had returned. As for what they wanted to do, Long Yu had a pretty good guess. This was a show of strength to him. Originally, Long Yu was not well known. Although he had done some deeds in the territory of the Demon Clan, and even repelled the pursuit of the Golden Flood Dragon Demon Clan and a few other demon clans, the Blood Demon Clan was not a weak demon clan. In the entire territory of the demon race, the Blood Demon Clan could definitely rank in the top 20. Very few demon clans could occupy an entire galaxy by themselves like the Blood Demon Clan. For example, a demon clan like the Golden Flood Dragon Demon Clan could only govern a galaxy together with other demon clans. Compared to the Blood Demon Clan, their overall strength was much weaker. Long Yu and Red Oriole stepped into the main hall of the Blood Demon Clan's royal palace openly, hand in hand. "Father, I'm back." Red Oriole's clear voice rang out. Then, the 1,000 or so experts of the Blood Demon Clan in the main hall all turned their gazes over. The vast majority of their gazes were focused on Red Oriole. As for Long Yu, who had concealed his cultivation, not many people cared about him. Chapter 1622. The main hall of the royal palace of the Blood Demon clan was enveloped in a solemn atmosphere. Red Oriole and Long Yu, on the other hand, did not seem to feel any pressure at all. They walked into the main hall together. However, Long Yu was still a little embarrassed. He and Red Oriole had concealed their cultivation to enter the main hall. Wasn't it a bit pretentious? But no matter what, it was fine as long as Red Oriole was happy. After all, Red Oriole had been under a lot of pressure when she had taken a liking to Long Yu. Now that she had returned with great success, it was quite normal for her to say that she wanted to tease the generals and ministers of the Blood Demon clan. Stop! 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 After the two of them stepped into the main hall, they had only taken a few steps when a young man of the Blood Demon clan stepped out from the side and walked out with his head held high. This young man of the Blood Demon clan was a cultivator of the 5th-level sovereign realm. His strength was not bad and he was not too old. In fact, he was even younger than Shueluo. It should be noted that Shueluo was Red Oriole's elder brother and a prince of the Blood Demon clan. The cultivation resources that he had received since he was young were definitely the most abundant. However, he was still incomparable to the young man of the Blood Demon clan in front of him. It was evident that the young man's talent was extraordinary. This is the son of the 13th general of the Blood Demon clan. His name is Rong. The 13th general can be considered the lord of a territory in the Blood Demon clan. He controls the north of the Blood Demon galaxy. I didn't expect that he would bring his son here today. Red Oriole did not have any misgivings. She smiled and spoke to Long Yu intimately. I understand. Hello, Rong. Long Yu smiled faintly and nodded. Is there anything I can help you with? Seeing the two of them chatting and laughing as if nothing had happened, and how they were still so intimately communicating with him, a genius of the 5th-level sovereign realm, the young Rong was instantly enraged. Right, logically speaking, if my father didn't say anything in the main hall, it wouldn't be anyone else's turn to point fingers, but today, it is obvious that my father has tacitly agreed to this. Red Oriole privately transmitted to Long Yu so that no one else could hear her. At this moment, Red Oriole and Long Yu raised their heads and saw that at the end of the main hall, the Crimson Throne was still empty. It was obvious that the Supreme Emperor of the Blood Demon clan had not arrived yet. Most likely, he wanted these generals and officials to rub Long Yu's spirit. If the situation wasn't bad, then the Blood Demon race's emperor would immediately rush over and deal with Long Yu. On the other hand, if the situation changed, then the Blood Demon race's emperor could deal with it according to the situation and wouldn't fall out with his daughter. In the end, the emperor would not act so recklessly. However, in Long Yu's opinion, all of this was meaningless. Rong was very angry. He could see that regardless of whether it was the princess or the man beside her, they did not put him in their eyes. This made him very unhappy. Forget about Her Highness, what was up with this human youth? From the looks of it, he had probably just entered the Dominator realm. He actually dared to act as if there was no one else in the main hall of the Blood Demon race's Imperial City. It was really infuriating. I heard that you are the man chosen by the princess. Rong stared at Long Yu arrogantly. He was wearing a crimson armor, and it was obvious that it was an Archean-rank combat weapon. It was quite good for a 5th-phase Dominator, but it was a pity that in Long Yu's eyes it was like a toy. Yes, what about it? Long Yu asked with narrowed eyes. I want to challenge you. Rong's eyes flickered with a blood-red color. The killing intent on his body was very dense. How noble is the princess? How can a human brat like you touch her? Although I am just an inconspicuous Mr. Nobody in the Blood Demon clan, I am still much better than you. You alone cannot protect the honorable body of Her Highness. Oh, so it's a challenge. If you want to challenge me, just say it. What's the point of saying so much? Come, come, come. Let's fight. Long Yu smiled and waved at Rong, indicating that he should start fighting. This situation made Rong furious. You are looking down on me. If that's the case, I won't be polite. Your Highness, please. Li Rong turned his head and looked at Hong Ying. It was obvious that this brat liked Hong Ying a lot. Hong Ying's martial talent was the highest in this generation of the blood demon race's royal family. Therefore, although there were 3 other princesses in the blood demon race's royal family, Hong Ying had always been the ideal partner of many genius disciples. Do your best. After Hong Ying finished speaking to Li Rong, she retreated without hesitation. She didn't stop him, nor did she say anything. She moved aside, which made Li Rong suspicious. He originally thought that the princess would definitely stop this seemingly unfair fight. However, it seemed like that wasn't the case. Is this brat hiding his strength? That can't be right. No matter how I look at it, he's just a human brat at the level of great ruler, Li Rong observed carefully. Unfortunately, it wasn't just him. Not even a single one of the 1,000 super experts of the blood demon race in the main hall could see through Long Yu's concealment of his cultivation level. At this moment, the atmosphere in the main hall became even more tense. The countless experts of the blood demon clan standing in the surroundings all cast their gazes on Long Yu. They wanted to see how this kid from the human race would deal with Li Rong's challenge. I know Li Rong's strength. I once fought with him on the battlefield of the foreign tribes. He faced 3 members of the Ice God clan who were at the same level as him without batting an eyelid. In the end, he killed the 3 members of the Ice God clan one by one and took the remains of their small worlds. That's right. The son of the 13th general must be a real talent. In my opinion, although he isn't the best in the blood demon race, he's still better than that human brat. However, how dare a mere human come to the palace of the blood demon race and take the princess away? Everyone wanted to see how Long Yu would be killed by Li Rong. Although it was not convenient to kill in the main hall, it was not a problem to humiliate him a little. This way, the princess would give up and choose the young geniuses of the blood demon race. It was a pity that Long Yu didn't care about these guys at all. Long Yu and Red Oriole had completely disappeared from the eyes of the blood demon race after they entered the demigod college. Even the supreme emperor of the blood demon race didn't know where they had gone. Therefore, they knew nothing about what happened to Long Yu and Red Oriole in the recent days. It was even more impossible for them to know anything about demigods and the soul race. Even in the battle to annihilate the soul race, the blood demon race had only sent 3 legions of dominators to fight. They were only there as backup and did not go to the main battlefield. As for the specific situation on the front line, especially the battle between demigods, nobody knew. Therefore, this was a great opportunity for Long Yu to show his face. If no one came to find trouble with him, the people present would not know how strong Long Yu was. Even if they were forced to obey Red Oriole because she was a demigod, they would not be convinced by Long Yu. So, what Long Yu had to do now was to convince all of them wholeheartedly. Then Li Rong, just do it. Long Yu stood where he was calmly. He did not look afraid or nervous at all. Arrogant and conceited. Li Rong laughed with disdain when he saw Long Yu's relaxed expression, and then he raised his hand. Quintessence rank blood-red divine markings surged out from within his palm, and they transformed into a blood-red torrent that rumbled down towards Long Yu. This move was Li Rong's innate technique, which was not very powerful. After all, he could see that Long Yu was only a level 1 great ruler. It was not convenient for him to kill him directly. When the attack landed on Long Yu, it instantly engulfed him, and everyone in the surroundings was stunned. That human kid didn't use any defensive techniques? He won't die just like that, right? Li Rong seems to have only used 30% of his strength, but that human kid is only a level 1 great ruler. He might really not be able to endure it. The crowd discussed animatedly. They could not help but look at the princess, Red Oriole. However, they noticed that Red Oriole was completely relaxed, and there was not a trace of worry on her face. The expressions of some of the seniors present, who were more sensitive with their spiritual senses, changed slightly. This was because they could sense that Long Yu, who was enveloped by the blood-colored torrent, did not move at all. He was not even injured in the slightest. In the next moment, the blood-colored torrent dispersed. Long Yu's complete body appeared in front of everyone, and there was a playful smile on his face. Don't embarrass yourself with such a technique, right? Come on, use your full strength. Otherwise, your attack will really feel like a mosquito bite. Long Yu's words were not exaggerated in the slightest. Although he did not move, and the aura in his body did not circulate in the slightest, he had blocked the attack with just his physical body. Even the black robe he was wearing was not damaged in the slightest. This was a set of clothes that the Heaven Fire Doyen had specially refined for him after he left the eroding moon ancient region. It could connect with his physical body, and as long as his physical body was not destroyed, the clothes would not be damaged. It could be said to be a very practical item. When Li Rong heard this, his face instantly turned red with anger. He said fiercely, "Don't hide your cultivation. Fight me head-on. Otherwise, I'm afraid I don't know how much strength I'll have to use. If I accidentally kill you, I won't be able to explain myself. Don't be afraid. You can't kill me. In fact, you can't even hurt me. Show me your full strength, and I'll make you give up." Long Yu said indifferently, "Li Rong, since he wants you to use your full strength, then use your full strength. Even if something happens, it's not your responsibility." Many people at the side began to persuade him, mainly because they could not stand the way Long Yu was acting. Wasn't he just a human boy? Didn't he only block less than 30% of Li Rong's strength? What was he so arrogant about? "Your Highness?" Li Rong turned his head and asked Hong Oriole. Go. Do whatever you want." Red Oriole, on the other hand, smiled confidently. Chapter 1623. After getting Red Oriole's approval, Li Rong nodded his head. However, there was also a hint of graveness on his face. From the previous attack, as well as Long Yu and Hong Ying's strong confidence, he could tell that this human brat was definitely not going to be easy to deal with. After all, he was sure that Long Yu was hiding his strength from the previous attack. Otherwise, how could he not move at all and not be injured at all? Even the first-level Sovereign Realm experts of the Abyss race couldn't do this. He was sure that Long Yu was hiding his strength. Since that was the case, he was prepared to go all out to deal with Long Yu. "This is my absolute beginning divine grade." Li Rong raised his hand and 3 blood-colored beads appeared in front of him. They were filled with endless killing intent. These 3 blood-red beads attracted and intertwined with each other in the space, forming a special blood-red magnetic field. Moreover, it seemed that Li Rong had already awakened it to the 7th level. He could be considered a pretty good genius. However, even compared to the other students of the Demigod Academy, Li Rong was still lacking a lot. Unfortunately, Li Rong did not know that Long Yu was an existence that surpassed all the other students after graduating from the Demigod Academy. "Heavenly veins, open!" Li Rong shouted, and a 3rd eye appeared on his forehead. This eye was blood-red in color, and the moment it appeared, his basic strength doubled. Long Yu could tell that this was a method to increase his basic strength. It should be a special elixir like the 8 Extremes blood pill. Although it could only double his basic strength, it wasn't harmful. It was unlike Long Yu's 8 Extremes blood pill, which would damage his small world every time he used it. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Long Yu wouldn't use the 8 Extremes blood vein. The veins of the heavens that Li Rong had opened were different. It seemed to be a simplified version of the 8 Extremities bloodline. The only difference was that it wasn't damaged, so the effect wasn't as strong. Overall, it was still a pretty good technique. At the level of a great ruler, when fighting against cultivators of the same realm, the opening of the veins of the heavens could result in a crushing effect. It could be seen that Li Rong planned to go all out against the current Long Yu. Bloodline awakening. A pair of blood-red wings appeared on Li Rong's back. This was the biggest difference between the Blood Demon clan and the human clan. Apart from the pair of blood-red wings, the body structure of the human clan and the Blood Demon clan was very similar. After the blood-colored wings appeared, Li Rong's basic strength doubled again, reaching 3 times his initial strength. At that moment, he began to activate the 3 blood-colored beads, which were his absolute beginning divine grade absolute beginning beads, and unleashed his strongest attack, the 7th awakening skill Blood Star Flurry. The 3 blood-colored beads were like 3 stars in the night sky, bursting with dazzling blood-colored radiance. The blood-colored divine characters at the origin level surged down like starlight. It was more than 10 times stronger than the blood-colored torrent from before. Just from the aura alone, it seemed like it was going to swallow Long Yu's entire body. He's going to die. Li Rong has actually reached this level. This is the power of a technique that only a 6th stage great ruler can unleash. As expected of the son of the 13th general, he really has such terrifying strength. However, it seems like the human clan's kid isn't going to move? Inside the main hall, nearly 1,000 experts of the Blood Demon clan were bewildered. If they didn't move to block this attack, the kid would really be in trouble. Unfortunately, Long Yu really didn't move at all. Red Oriole, who was at the side, also pursed her lips and smiled lightly. She didn't feel nervous at all, as if she was in a battle. She only felt like she was watching a good show. As the blood-colored starlight descended, Long Yu's entire body was enveloped by it. However, before the blood-colored starlight dissipated, Long Yu's voice could be heard. "It's still an itch. In my opinion, it's better to send someone else. That Li Rong, you can't do it." In the next moment, Long Yu punched out. He didn't use the power of any divine characters. Instead, he relied purely on his physical body to completely shatter the blood-colored starlight. The figure in black robes once again appeared in everyone's vision. Nearly 1,000 experts were dumbfounded by this scene. Is this guy still human? This was especially true for Li Rong, who had personally attacked. He knew very well that even a 6th-stage great ruler from the Abyss clan wouldn't be able to escape unscathed from his attack, let alone break it so easily and step out. You have the cultivation of a 7th-stage great ruler. Li Rong's face darkened. Do you admit defeat? Long Yu didn't answer his question. Instead, he smiled faintly and asked in return. I admit defeat. Although Li Rong was very unwilling, he knew that he couldn't hurt Long Yu even the slightest bit when he used his full strength. This made him realize that Long Yu was really strong. At least, he wasn't an existence that he could fight against right now. Let me do it. Another male of the Blood Demon clan with a low voice walked out of the crowd. His footsteps were extremely graceful, and his face was slightly pale. There was a sickly, feminine beauty to him, and he did not look much different from a woman. This feminine Blood Demon race man was an expert of the 7th-stage Great Ruler realm. He was about the same age as Li Rong. It's Mountain Well Ruler. If Shui Luo and Li Rong were the super geniuses of the Blood Demon race, then Mountain Well Ruler could be said to be the peak genius of the Blood Demon race. It could even be said that in the past 100 years, only Red Oriole could compare to Mountain Well Ruler in terms of talent. In the eyes of many experts of the Blood Demon race, Mountain Well Ruler was an existence that could possibly break through to the demigod realm in the future. It was a pity that they didn't know that Red Oriole's talent was higher than Mountain Well Ruler's. With the help of Long Yu, she was able to step into the demigod realm recently. If nothing unexpected happened to Mountain Well Ruler, it would be 100 years before he could step into the demigod realm. Right now, Mountain Well Ruler was already at the peak of the 7th-stage Great Ruler realm. In terms of innate techniques, martial techniques, and combat weapons, he was stronger than other 7th-stage Great Rulers. Even some experts of the older generation were no longer a match for Mountain Well Ruler. Your Highness, I am Mountain Well Ruler. I would like to exchange some pointers with Your Highness. Please forgive me. An elegant smile appeared on Mountain Well Ruler's feminine face. He walked in front of Red Oriole and bowed respectfully. It's okay. You can go. Red Oriole nodded. She still had some impression of Mountain Well Ruler. After all, when she was a child, only this guy could barely keep up with her progress. Therefore, in terms of talent, Mountain Well Ruler was not bad. At least, he could be regarded as the top among the ordinary people. It was a pity that there was a gap between him and Red Oriole, not to mention Long Yu. The current Long Yu only cultivated a few years later than Red Oriole. Otherwise, he would have become a demigod long ago. What are the rules for us to exchange pointers? An inexplicable smile appeared on Mountain Well Ruler's feminine face. He asked Long Yu with a smile. It's still the same. You attack with all your strength. I'll take it. Long Yu smiled faintly. Really? Mountain Well Ruler smiled. Really? Long Yu nodded. Then I'll have to offend you. After saying that, Mountain Well Ruler's expression finally became serious. He had keenly sensed all of Long Yu's movements, but the key was that Li Rong was too weak. He did not force Long Yu to use any tricks at all. He did not even use any divine symbols. Therefore, Mountain Well Ruler still had no idea about Long Yu's strength. After all, he was the man chosen by Red Oriole. Mountain Well Ruler attached great importance to Long Yu. From the beginning, he knew that Li Rong was definitely not a match for him. But he did not expect that he would lose so miserably. He did not even force Long Yu to use any trick. Yamaji-chi stood on tiptoe and paced slowly. He walked around in the field but did not make a move. Since Long Yu had said that he was only defending, he could not launch a sneak attack. He could only wait for his opponent to attack. Originally, if this had continued, Long Yu would not have felt any pressure at all. Victory was inevitable. All he cared about was letting Red Oriole's father see that he was very strong, and that he was definitely worthy of Red Oriole. However, while Mountain Well Ruler was observing Long Yu, a loud report came from outside of the palace. Report: a bunch of alien members of the Soul Clan have appeared in the Blood Demon Galaxy. They are led by a demigod. 2 training planets of our clan have been completely destroyed. When the report arrived, the main hall of the royal palace of the Blood Demon Clan was immediately thrown into chaos. The Soul Clan was attacking. Demigod was leading the troops. 2 cultivation planets had already been destroyed. Who was in the mood to talk to Long Yu at such a moment? It seems that the fight can only be held next time. If you have the guts, come with me to resist the alien race. Do you dare? Yamaguchi's figure paused for a moment. His eyes were filled with intense hatred. Of course, this hatred was completely directed at the alien races. As for Long Yu, this feminine genius of the Blood Demon Clan revealed a provocative look. We have no time to lose. Let's go. Long Yu, however, did not pay any attention to Mountain Well Ruler. The moment he heard that the demigod of the Soul Clan was leading a team to attack the Blood Demon Galaxy, he knew that the farce in the palace could not go on any longer. He nodded at Red Oriole and held her in his arms. Then, the Void Shadow Dragon Dagger flashed and brought them to the nearest teleportation array. How is it possible? The members of the Blood Demon Clan in the main hall of the royal palace were all stunned. There was a space barrier on the Blood Demon planet. How could they have teleported away so easily? However, now was not the time to discuss such things with a great enemy. Everyone, follow me into battle. The Emperor of the Blood Demon Clan, Red Oriole's father, who had been hiding behind the palace, immediately flew to the sky of the palace of the Blood Demon Clan and set off with the experts of the Blood Demon Clan. Although demigods were attacking, as the guardians of the Blood Demon Galaxy, they could not do nothing. At the very least, they had to buy themselves enough time for the demigod seniors of the demon race to reinforce them. Until then, the Blood Demon Galaxy had to suffer the minimum loss. Chapter 1624. Nobody had expected that the soul race would counterattack the demon race when they were facing the crisis of extinction. Thankfully, they came from the blood demon galaxy. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to get there so quickly. Long Yu brought Red Oriole and teleported to the teleportation array on the blood demon planet. He was more or less relieved. Yes. However, the blood demon race will suffer heavy losses this time. Red Oriole was worried. I wonder where the Saint Emperor and Moon Song went. They should have heard the news too, right? Long Yu slightly frowned. He did not know how many demigods the soul race had sent. He and Red Oriole might not be able to defeat them, but with the Saint Emperor and Moon Song, it was definitely enough. Let's contact them first, just to be safe. Red Oriole nodded at Long Yu solemnly. Although it will take some time to contact them and more training planets will be attacked, it's better than being killed if we go there. In that case, the losses will be even greater. Alright. Long Yu thought so, too. Through the teleportation array, the two of them soon reached a relatively remote scenic area in the Blood Demon Galaxy. The scenic area had always been a popular tourist destination. Other demons and even cultivators from the territory of human beings were very willing to visit the scenic area. It was a rarely seen space surrounded by 7 stars. The 7 blood-red divine runic sources were a bit dim, but because these 7 divine runic sources were gathered together, they became brighter than any other star. And in the center of these 7 divine runic sources was a remote training planet. Although the 7 sources of divine symbols surrounded the planet, the remote planet did not have abundant training resources. Instead, even the natural spiritual energy and the power of creation had been taken away by the rotating power of the sources of divine symbols. The planet was extremely barren. Only the traveling cultivators would come to this place to enjoy the strange view of the 7 sources of divine symbols gathered together. The Saint Emperor and Moon Song's first destination was the 7 divine planet. Very quickly, Long Yu and Red Oriole stepped onto the desolate land of the 7 gods planet. On this land, there were beautiful viewing areas everywhere. Countless families had set up viewing areas here and collected fees from visitors. The income could be considered quite good. I'll look for them. After saying that, Red Oriole spread her power of deduction to the entire 7 gods planet. After she stepped into the demigod level, she could figure out the situation of the entire planet with the power of deduction alone. Nobody could escape her exploration. What's more, the Holy Emperor and Moon Song shouldn't be on guard against the power of deduction. Moreover, he could sense that this power belonged to Red Oriole. In the space of 3 breaths, Red Oriole received the news. I found them. Follow me. Red Oriole pulled Long Yu along as they quickly arrived at a very famous scenic area on the 7 gods planet. There were currently many tourists in this area. The Sage Emperor and Moon Song had concealed their cultivation and were dressed in casual dresses as they leisurely played around in the scenic area. When the 2 girls saw Long Yu and Red Oriole shine their lights on them, they felt a bit strange. What's wrong? What happened? Moon Song asked. The 2 girls left the viewing area and flew to the sky, meeting up with Long Yu and Red Oriole. A demigod of the soul race is leading a team to attack the Blood Demon Galaxy. They must have come through a spacetime pathway. Red Oriole replied. The soul race must have kept the spacetime coordinates of the Blood Demon Galaxy a long time ago. That's why they were able to build a spacetime pathway that leads directly to this place. Also, to build such a pathway, at least 3 demigods have to perform it at the same time, Long Yu said solemnly. Therefore, we have to ask you to go with us in order to fight them. Otherwise, the entire Blood Demon Galaxy will be in grave danger. Yes. Moon Song and the Holy Emperor immediately realized the seriousness of the matter. They nodded and decided to kill the demigods of the soul race with the 2 girls. Even if there were 3 demigods of the soul race, as long as they could stall them until the demigod experts who were guarding the demon race arrived, the final victory would still be theirs. The meeting of the four of them did not take too long. Very soon, they were teleported to the galaxy where the Soul Race had invaded through the space-time teleportation array. In the meantime, the royal family of the Blood Demon clan and the great generals had all set off with their troop. The Blood Demon Galaxy, which had been guarded and ruled by the Blood Demon clan for such a long time, was not going to be taken down so easily. Even the demigods would not have a problem delaying the invaders for a while. In the meantime, the situation on this side was spread out as quickly as possible. Very soon, the news reached an expert of the Demigod Demon clan 3 galaxies away. The expert of the Demigod Demon clan was an expert whose strength density was 17 times higher than normal. He had been guarding 1/3 of the territory of the Demon clan. Now that he heard that the Blood Demon Galaxy had been invaded by the Soul Race, he naturally could not stay idle. Leading his trusted troops, he came to the direction where the Soul Race was invading as quickly as possible. One of the advantages of fighting on home territory was that the speed of mobilization was very fast. With the help of the space-time teleportation array, the invaders were surrounded very quickly. It was also because no alien species would come to the Blood Demon clan to be killed under normal circumstances. The best way to attack the territory of a race was to nibble at it from the outside. It was basically unrealistic to knock down the enemy in one go. The first to arrive were the royal family of the Blood Demon clan and the many generals of the Blood Demon clan. At that moment, 2 cultivation planets had been occupied by the Soul Invaders. It could be said that the Fae and humans living on these 2 cultivation planets had already bid farewell to this world. It was impossible to save them. In order to prevent the damage from increasing, the space-time teleportation arrays around the 2 cultivation planets had been completely sealed. The power of the divine glyphs had been completely frozen and sealed the teleportation arrays. No Soul Race member would show up in the teleportation arrays nearby. But even so, it was not the safest plan. It must be noted that the enemy was led by an expert of the Demigod Demon clan. Even if they were moving forward in the void without using the space-time teleportation arrays, it would only take them less than half an hour to reach the next cultivation planet. Be alert at all times. Report to me immediately if you discover anything. The Supreme Emperor of the Blood Demon clan, who was also Red Oriole's father, Red Ho, was leading 3 legions of sovereigns. He had arrived at one of the cultivation planets that were closest to the cultivation planets that had been invaded and was ready for battle. Although it was impossible for him to kill demigods, he had ways to buy himself some time. 3 legions of dominators were already the limit for the Blood Demon clan. They were the strongest troops stationed in the entire Blood Demon galaxy. Damn it. We don't even know how many demigods our enemy has. We will be in a passive position if this goes on. Mountain Well Ruler was with a legion of dominators. He stayed with Hong Xiu and guarded the cultivation planets nearby. It was impossible for them to attack actively. They could only stall the demigods with the advantage of the terrain and the ancient defense arrays that they had prepared a long time ago. Don't panic. Wait for my news. Hong Xiu was relatively calm. After all, he was the emperor of the Blood Demon clan. He had been through similar situations before. At the very least, he had faced the demigods of the alien species before. He was not scared just because he heard the name of the alien species. Some of the great dominators and the blood demons in the Dominator's arcane realm, on the other hand, were very nervous. Alien invasions were rare. This was the first time in their lives that they had ever encountered one. Many warriors of the Blood Demon clan had never been to the battlefield of the alien species. They had never seen an alien species before. They were only told that a lot of casualties had occurred on the battlefield. Therefore, they were all nervous. The atmosphere in the battlefield was extremely solemn, as if a dark cloud were hanging over everyone's heart. Even Hong Xiu, although he seemed calm, was in fact beating very fast. The Blood Demon clan, from the 1st general to the 18 generals, had led their legions and guarded the 5 cultivation planets around the 2 destroyed cultivation planet. After the teleportation arrays further away were blocked, the enemy's target of attack would only be one of the 5 cultivation planet. The void in all directions had been filled with dragnets, too. Although they could not stop the demigods from moving forward, they could detect the enemy's movement immediately. The 8 grass planet is under attack. At that moment, news came from the 13th general's direction, causing the people nearby to tense up. "I'm going to reinforce them." After Mountain Well Ruler received the news, he immediately activated the teleportation arrays and brought the army of dominators to the 8 grass planet nearby. Hardly had he walked out of the teleportation arrays when he was ambushed fiercely, because the first target of the Soul Race's army was the teleportation arrays. As long as the teleportation arrays were activated, they would be able to send the army to the front line faster. Fight! Mountain Well Ruler did not hesitate. The bloody divine symbols all over his body exploded. A pair of bloody wings unfolded, and he charged into the shapeless army of the Soul Race. Layers of bloody brilliance covered Mountain Well Ruler's entire body, blocking the attacks from all directions. But in fact, the Blood Demon clan was at a disadvantage in the battle against the Soul Race, because the Blood Demon clan did not have many methods to attack the soul. Thankfully, Mountain Well Ruler was equipped with such methods himself. He killed quite a few ordinary members of the Soul Race's army in the Dominator's arcane realm immediately. However, the army led by Mountain Well Ruler did not have it easy. On one hand, the Soul Race was invisible and hard to detect. On the other hand, even if they were discovered, it was difficult to kill them. Therefore, Mountain Well Ruler's approach was to reorganize his army of dominators. In every squad, there must be at least 1 or 2 existences who could attack the soul. The others were responsible for defense and alerting the surroundings. With such an arrangement, the army of dominators led by Mountain Well Ruler did not suffer many losses. Very soon, they cleared the Soul Race members who had broken into the teleportation arrays and rushed out. At this time, Mountain Well Ruler finally realized the seriousness of the matter. A demigod of the Soul Race had come personally and was attacking the entire training planet. It seemed that the 13 general and the others could not hold on at all. Chapter 1625. Other than the 13 generals, there were also the 15th generals and the 7th generals stationed on the planet. When they received the news of the attack, Yamaji-chi and the other 2 generals rushed over through the teleportation array. On the entire planet, there were more than 10 armies of dominators, as well as a great army of dominators led by the 7th generals. In terms of combat ability, a great army of dominators was at least as powerful as 5 armies of dominators. Right now, it was the great army of dominators that was restraining the demigod expert of the Soul Race. The other armies of dominators that had been brought over were fighting fiercely with the other armies of dominators of the Blood Demon clan. The defense arrays on 8 Grass Planet that had existed for a long time were fully activated at this moment. With the cooperation of the great army of dominators led by the 7th generals, they managed to trap the demigod expert of the Soul Race. That was because the demigod of the Soul Race was not very strong. He had just become a demigod not long ago, and his strength density was only about 11 to 12 times higher than normal. Of course, things like strength density were not things that normal cultivators would know at all, because there was no need to know. Even if they knew, if they could not break into the demigod level, they would not think of any special ways to fight against demigod. It was just like how lions, wolves, tigers, and leopards were always hunters, and rabbits, sheep, cows, and horses were always prey. The defense arrays around 8 Grass Planet had been set up by demigods a long time ago. Although it had been a long time, they could still trap the demigod expert of the Soul Race. There happened to be such an array on 8 Grass Planet. Because 8 Grass Planet had a long history, There would not be such defense arrays on other cultivation planets that were newly developed. It would be very costly to invite a demigod to set up a defense array on a cultivation planet, and it was possible that it would not be used for hundreds or thousands of years. It would be a complete waste. There were very few demigods in the human race and the demon race. There were so many cultivation planets, but there were no more than 10 that had similar defense arrays. Otherwise, 8 Grass Planet would have been conquered by the demigod expert of the Soul race a long time ago. The situation was relatively stable right now. There should be enough time for other people to clean up the army of dominators of the Soul race. However, what should they do with the demigod expert? It was absolutely impossible for the Blood Demon clan to slay the demigod of the Soul clan. Even if they managed to trap him with the defense rune arrays of the primeval era, it wouldn't last long. When the demigod of the Soul clan broke free, the entire planet would definitely fall very soon. However, he would try to stall for as long as he could. Right now, he could only wait for the demigod experts of the demon race to come and help. Fierce battles were happening everywhere on the 8-Mang star. However, no blood was shed in this battle, because the attacks of the Soul race were all mental and soul attacks. The Blood Demon clan members who were hit would die immediately, and their physical bodies would be completely unharmed. As for the Soul race, they didn't have a physical body. Even if they were killed, they would directly dissipate into thin air, leaving nothing behind. Only a bit of their consciousness would be left behind, wrapping around the wreckage of their small world. I can't hold on any longer. 7 generals' piercingly cold words practically spread throughout the entire 8-Mang star. Everyone else, retreat. The 7th Legion will stay and defend the demigod expert. The 7th Legion was the legion under the command of 7 generals. It was the only legion of the great dominators on the 8-Mang star. The 10,000 members of the Blood Demon clan were all at least in the Great Dominator level. Only such a legion could slightly delay the demigod of the Soul clan and allow the other legions to retreat. The other legions retreated one after another. However, none of the legions of the Dominators were unscathed. In the brief battle, the legion of the Blood Demon clan that suffered the least losses had lost more than 1,000 people. The bodies that had lost their minds and souls were taken away by their comrades in tears. When Shan Jingqi asked the legion of the Dominators to retreat, he stayed at the front to cover the retreat. He would not leave until all his people were gone. However, at this moment, he saw 2 familiar figures appearing from the white light of the teleportation array and flying toward the center of the primeval defense rune arrays in the sky. Your Highness! Shan Jingqi was dazed for a moment. He grew anxious and shouted, Your Highness, the demigod of the Soul clan is about to break free. Don't go there. It's too dangerous. Don't worry. You guys go first. Red Oriole was too lazy to say any more nonsense. She simply asked the others to retreat first. 7th General, you and your legion leave immediately. Don't hesitate. Your Highness. 7th General was old, but he still had his cultivation. Hearing this, he burst into tears. What are you doing here? It's enough for us to stall this beast. Go now. I'm telling you to go, so go. Long Yu shouted. The aura of his peak Great Dominator cultivation finally burst out. The shadow of a giant appeared behind him, holding a huge totem in its hand. Siphon Totem. This was a congenital technique that was infused with the essence of the primordium wood element. It was a divinized technique, Soul Seal Siphon. Long Yu had already infused the essence of the primordium wood element into it. At this moment, when he performed it, the huge totem appeared on the surface of the 8-Mang star like a pillar that connected the sky. The giant shadow behind the siphon totem was the symbol of the divinized technique. When this congenital technique appeared, everyone in the legion of the Blood Demon race was shocked. What kind of technique was this? Such majestic power. He was clearly just a human kid who was only a great dominator, but he was releasing such a terrifying aura. It was even comparable to demigod experts. Divinized techniques were exclusive to demigod experts in the first place. It was basically impossible for those who had not reached the demigod level to have divinized technique. Long Yu was an exception. It was also at this moment that the demigod of the soul race finally broke through the shackles of the ancient defense array. A terrifying and violent mental attack surged out in all directions. The power that had been suppressed for a long time suddenly burst out, trying to kill all the warriors of the blood demon race in the surroundings. However, one giant shadow after another appeared around the demigod of the soul race, each holding a huge dark totem. Then, a strong suction force erupted from the siphon totems, completely swallowing the mental blast released by the demigod of the soul race into the totems. The moment he touched his opponent's power, the density of his opponent's power was reduced by half. Then, Long Yu's innate skill was a deified skill. With the addition of the wood element primordium essence, his ability to absorb mental power was 10 times stronger than before. With the totem guarding the place, the first wave of attack from the demigod of the soul race was completely blocked. The members of the blood demon clan who were still on the planet were all dumbfounded by the scene. Yamaji-chi, who hadn't left yet, also opened his eyes wide. He's actually so strong. That's a demigod. He resisted the attack of a demigod with a congenital technique. He's too strong. Seeing the situation, the old 7th general immediately made up his mind. Everyone, retreat. After receiving the order, none of the members of the Blood Demon clan's Lord Legion dared to disobey. They all retreated into the distance. Although they had bravely come to attack the demigod of the soul race, they had never thought that they could return alive. Now there seemed to be a turning point. However, could the human, who was only a level 7 great dominator, really resist the demigod of the soul race? That's Her Highness, man. While retreating, the 7th general stared at the battlefield carefully, not willing to miss any details of the battle. Explode. Then, Long Yu clenched his hands. A total of 7 pitch-black totems in the battlefield crashed toward where the demigod of the soul race was at the center. Then, they all exploded. The terrifying turbulence of mental blasts swept across the entire area and completely enveloped the demigod of the soul race. This was the power of the demigod of the soul race. Therefore, the impact on the soul was still very strong. Unfortunately, a demigod was a demigod after all. Although Long Yu had reduced the density of the demigod's power by half, he was still too naive to think that he could kill it. The mental aura of the soul race flew out from the mental blast in the next moment and arrived above Long Yu's head in the blink of an eye. Hum! A cold and terrifying sound rang out. A pitch-black shadow appeared behind the demigod of the soul race. He used his divinized technique. Countless invisible arms formed by the power of the divine symbols actually divided the space where Long Yu was into 9 parts. Then, the invisible arms actually tore the space apart, turning it into 9 pieces. This was the first time that Long Yu had fought head-on with a demigod expert with his own strength. In the past, he had only been a support and did not feel too much pressure. But now, he felt that the opponent's attack was almost suffocating him. The space he was in was divided into 9 fragments, and he only had enough time to avoid his devil dust heart at the most critical moment, so that it was not cut apart. Then, Long Yu's physical body instantly split into 9 pieces and completely shattered in the void. Is he dead? Yamaji-chi, the 7 generals, and the rest of them all looked at the battlefield in horror. They had never heard of such a method of cutting the space pieces. The princess's man had been so strong, but he had still been killed in one move? Your Highness, don't go. Yamaji-chi saw Red Oriole at a glance and immediately exclaimed. Just now, Red Oriole did not help Long Yu because she was covering the retreat of the others. Now that almost everybody had retreated to a safe area, if she did not deal with the demigod of the soul race, Long Yu would really be killed. At this moment, both the 7 generals and Yamaji-chi felt that the princess seemed to be dying for love. But after Red Oriole teleported to the void, the next moment, the aura of a demigod suddenly blossomed. She spread her blood-colored wings, and a huge pair of wings appeared behind her. Divine Transformation God Art activate! At this moment, the entire 8-mang star seemed to have been dyed blood red, and Red Oriole had become the blood devil that had swallowed the sky and the earth. The warriors of the Blood Demon clan around were all shocked. Their princess was also a demigod. Chapter 1626. The blood-colored divine light turned into a torrent that completely surrounded the soul demigod. Then, the enormous shadow of wings on Red Oriole's back condensed countless bloody whips that smashed at the demigods of the soul race. This demigod of the soul race had been hit by Long Yu at first. In a short time, its power density had been reduced by half, and it was only 5 or 6 times its original density. Although Red Oriole was only a new demigod, her power density was still 10 times. At this moment, the crimson whips, which had been infused with the essence of the ultimate beginning realm of the wood class, hit the soul of the demigods of the soul race like crimson thunderbolts, causing irreparable damage again and again. As for Long Yu, who had been sliced into pieces by the space division, he took advantage of this time to reconstruct his fleshly body. In just 2 breaths of time, Long Yu had completely reconstructed his fleshly body. As for the other 8 pieces of his fleshly body that had been broken apart by the spatial rupture, they still existed within the spatial rupture. Seeing this, Long Yu felt somewhat puzzled. He raised his hand, and the burial void enveloped the space in the field. Then, it exploded and consumed all the body pieces, destroying them. It didn't feel good to see the other parts of his body. Even Long Yu didn't want to leave his body pieces outside. After he was done, he immediately continued to deal with the soul demigod. Things were different now. Before, there were 8 demigods attacking together, so when Long Yu took action, the other demigods could have killed the soul demigod. But now, there was only Red Oriole. Even though Red Oriole's power density was twice that of the soul demigod, it was still very difficult to kill the enemy. Most importantly, Red Oriole only had the divine technique that targeted the soul. The other techniques didn't have much effect on the soul demigod, so there was no need to use them. In such a situation, the whole situation was rather tricky. Divine Rune of Darkness. Boundless Grasp. Long Yu performed a high-quality, unbounded level martial technique from afar. The Dark Flow Divine Technique turned into an invisible hand that fell into the soul demigod's body and affected him. When the power inside his body was sealed for a moment, the power inside his body began to disperse. This was the special effect of the Divine Rune of Darkness. Although it was only a Divine Revelation rune, and although it was something that Long Yu, a 7th phase great ruler, had used, it still made the soul race demigod feel very uncomfortable. She wanted to get rid of Long Yu first because she sensed that Long Yu's attacks had reduced her power density. If she didn't get rid of Long Yu, she would never be a match for Red Oriole. At this moment, the surrounding crowd was also stunned. Not only did they not expect that the princess of the Blood Demon clan would be an expert in the demigod level, they also did not expect that the princess's husband could be resurrected after being cut into 9 pieces. It could be seen that the man's physical body was truly powerful. However, that was an attack from a demigod expert. That 7th phase dominator was actually able to withstand it? This was too strong. Furthermore, he didn't retreat after blocking the attack. Instead, he continued to fight the demigod of the soul race. Watching from the side, Shan Jingqi couldn't help but smile bitterly. He finally understood why Long Yu and the princess were so calm and composed in the main hall of the royal family of the Blood Demon clan. It turned out that their strength had already reached such a level. However, at the same time, Shan Jingqi also felt that the princess was too disgusting. Was she hiding her cultivation just to see the younger generation of the Blood Demon clan make a fool of themselves? Logically, the princess had already stepped into the demigod level. Even if she became the emperor of the entire Blood Demon clan, nobody would have any objection. If the human was allowed to perform, although many people would change their opinion of his strength, they were not of the same clan after all. The Blood Demon clan and the human clan, Shan Jingqi still felt that Long Yu was not worthy of Red Oriole. It must be noted that Red Oriole had already reached the demigod level, while Long Yu was still a 7th phase great ruler. It was possible that he would never be able to step into the demigod level in his lifetime. How could such a man, and he was still a human, be worthy of the powerful princess of the Blood Demon clan? However, Shan Jingqi couldn't say anything right now. The battle in the field was so intense that he only had a flash of such thoughts before he was attracted by the fierce battle in the field. The 7th general was surprised too. The 7th general was a peak 7th phase sovereign, and had cultivated an unbounded martial skill. He was one of the stronger people in the older generation, and had been to the eroding moon ancient region before. Unfortunately, he hadn't been able to find anything good there, and had been caught in a dangerous situation that had forced him to flee. The 7th general's opinion was still deeply rooted. Even if this guy has the ability to restrain demigods, he can't be with the princess. After all, he is a human. He looked at the field. In the fierce battle, Long Yu, together with Red Oriole, had completely suppressed the demigod of the Soul Clan. The demigod of the Soul Clan wanted to kill Long Yu, but Long Yu kept dodging. Red Oriole's fierce attacks gave the demigod little chance. The stalemate in the field was exactly what Long Yu and Red Oriole wanted to see. A stalemate meant that the other party might call for help. Then, when the other demigods arrived, they would be able to catch them all. After all, the other party didn't have a space-time teleportation array to use, so it was more difficult for reinforcements to arrive. But after Long Yu and Red Oriole held off the demigod of the Soul Clan for about 15 minutes, the aura of other demigods finally came from the distance. The other 2 demigods of the Soul Clan had finally arrived. In order to kill Red Oriole as soon as possible, the 3 demigods of the Soul race came up with a solution. After killing Red Oriole, they would immediately turn around and leave. After all, they were in the heartland of the demon race. If they stayed for a long time, they would definitely attract more demigods of the demon race. But they didn't know that this was a trap that Long Yu and Red Oriole had set up. They've appeared. Long Yu sensed the aura of the other 2 demigods of the Soul Clan from afar. They quickly flew over from the distant void. Saint Emperor, Moon Song, get ready! Red Oriole's message was also delivered to the ears of the 2 demigods who were not far away. There are 2 more demigods. On the 8 grass planet, the members of the Blood Demon clan who hadn't retreated were all pale at this moment. They had thought that the enemy's attack would be defeated after the princess revealed her strength as a demigod. They didn't expect that 2 new demigods of the Soul Clan would arrive at the battlefield very soon. It was already so difficult to deal with 1 demigod. If the princess had to deal with 3 demigods, she probably wouldn't be able to take it. Your Highness! Yamajichi hurried to shout. 2 demigods of the Soul Clan have come as reinforcements. Let's retreat first. When the demigod seniors of the demon race arrive, we can deal with them together. The 7th general also roared, everybody leave the 8 grass planet. No one is allowed to stay. Your Highness, you will retreat too. The Blood Demon clan finally had a demigod. The 7th general and the rest of them did not want to see Red Oriole die here. It was a pity that, although they meant well, Long Yu and Red Oriole had other plans. It was impossible for them to retreat just like that. If that's the case, it's time to finish it. Long Yu nodded at Red Oriole from far away. Then, he raised his hand, and the divine language of the Tartarian was quickly condensed in his hand. The black divine language of the revelatory level was released in the form of a technique and condensed into a pitch-black ball of the Tartarian. After the heir of the Tartarian appeared on the battlefield, the demigod of the Soul Clan was slowed down by almost 10 times. Red Oriole, on the other hand, was outside the range of the area where time was slowed down. The illusionary shadow of an enormous pair of bloody wings appeared on Red Oriole's back again. Then, the divine language burst out abruptly and turned into countless bloody whips, which lashed at the spirit and soul of the demigod of the Soul Clan. This time, the demigod of the Soul Clan was affected by the ball of the Tartarian and had no time to put up any defense. His entire spirit and soul were shattered into thousands of pieces by the bloody whips. Devour! Long Yu clenched his fists tightly. The power of the ball of the Tartarian was instantly gathered and swallowed the demigod of the Soul Clan that had been killed. Although the effect was not very strong, the ball of the Tartarian would still be strengthened if it continued to be swallowed. However, at this time, Long Yu realized that the ball of the Tartarian's effect on the demigod of the Tartarian was not that strong. It was weaker than when it was used on other people. After all, he was only a 7th-rank great ruler. It was impossible for him to unleash the full effect of the ball of the Tartarian. After killing the first demigod of the Soul Clan, the other 2 demigods of the Soul Clan that were approaching knew that something was wrong. They wanted to turn around and retreat, but how could they retreat at this time? The stalemate between Long Yu and Red Oriole had finally attracted the other 2 demigods of the Soul Clan. There was no way they would let them leave. What happened next was 3 against 2. Furthermore, there was a demigod killer, like Long Yu, assisting from the side, weakening the density of the demigod power of the other party. The 2 demigods of the Soul Clan had just retreated when the figures of 2 women appeared in the void. They raised their hands, and the majestic power of holy light enveloped the entire void, completely freezing it. This was one of the innate techniques of the Saint Emperor, Holy Light Seal. It could seal the void with the power of the divine characters of light, filling the entire void with the sticky power of the divine characters of light. Even Long Yu's path of the Tartarian would find it difficult to break through such a technique. This was because such a spatial seal did not rely on the divine characters of space. The unconventional spatial seal technique stunned the 2 demigods of the Soul Clan for a moment. Then, they completely lost the chance to retreat. Hand of the Tartarian. Boundless grasp. Long Yu condensed a devil dust doppelganger and teleported into the void. Then, each of them displayed a small technique. Chapter 1627. One of the dark, gigantic shadow's bony arms pierced out of the void and landed on one of the soul race demigods. The demigod was not trapped, but the power of the star branding pattern in the arm weakened the demigod's power density. The other demigod of the soul race, on the other hand, suddenly burst out a wave of dim divine symbols. The weird power of the star branding pattern also weakened the demigod's power density, making it even more difficult for him to break free from the Saint Emperor's holy light. Then, the Saint Emperor, Moon Song, and Red Oriole joined hands and attacked one of the demigods of the soul race, whose power density was 13 times higher than before. The other demigod of the soul race had 14 times the power density, but it was stalled by Long Yu. The Sphere of the Abyss, the Hand of the Abyss, the Siphon Totem, the 12-star prison, and all kinds of attacks were launched non-stop, mainly to keep the Sphere of the Abyss so that the demigod of the soul race could not help his companion for a while. The other 2 demigods are both so young? I've never seen them before. The warriors of the Blood Demon clan in the battlefield did not have the time to retreat when they were shocked by the situation in the battlefield again. They saw Moon Song and the Saint Emperor and sensed their cultivation easily. They were demigods like Red Oriole. Also, they had never heard of the 2 demigods before, let alone seen them. They're new demigods. It's said that a lot of new demigods have appeared in the Eclipse Moon ancient territory this time. It's just that they haven't been notified to every place in the territory yet. That's why we don't know it yet. That's right. That should be the case. There are already 3 new demigods in our place alone. The woman in white is also a member of the demon race, isn't she? After saying that, the Saint Emperor's body changed. White brilliance burst out, and he turned into his true form as a demonic cultivator. A snow-white giant bird dashed out of the void, and the shadow of a snow-white giant bird appeared behind him. It was exactly the appearance of a divine eyes technique. He seems to be from the White Feather Demon clan. But the most talented one of the White Feather Demon clan seems to be a man, and he seems to have been missing for a long time. The disappearance of the White Feather Monstrous clan seems to be because of this man by the name of Long Yu, right? It seems that the demigod of the White Feather Demons has an intimate relationship with the princess's man. It can't be that the man is two-timing, right? It's possible, and there might be more than 2 of them. Look at the new demigod of the human race. If he wasn't close to them, how could he have appeared in the territory of demons so quickly? Naturally, they were referring to Moonsong. Poor Long Yu. In the eyes of the warriors of the Blood Demon clan, he had become a playboy, and a very capable one at that. He was merely a level 7 great dominator, but the girls he had picked up were all demigods. Wasn't he a bit too tough? Or were the girls that the man chose all talented enough to enter the demigod level? His judgment of a person was too accurate. After the situation on the battlefield turned for the better, the warriors of the Blood Demon clan were not as nervous anymore. After the initial shock, they saw that one of the demigods of the Soul clan had been killed and knew that the situation on the battlefield should be fine. After all, it was 3 against 2. They could not see Long Yu's role in the battle, so they subconsciously ignored Long Yu and regarded him as a man who lived off a woman. The 7th general looked at the battlefield and found that Long Yu seemed to know the 3 new demigods. Also, they seemed to have cooperated with each other for a long time in the battle. They seemed to be quite close to each other, too. He was even more annoyed. In the first place, he had thought that a man in the level of a level 7 great dominator was not good enough for the princess of the Blood Demon clan. Now, he felt that it was even more inappropriate. I must remonstrate with the princess after this is over. Right now, Red Oriole was an expert in the demigod level. He could not say whatever he wanted like before. Although he was dissatisfied, there were still some things that he could not say. He could only mention it and see Red Oriole's reaction first. Therefore, the 7th general decided to take it slow and not rush. The people in the battle had no idea what the warriors of the Blood Demon clan were thinking about. Long Yu was stalling one of the demigods of the Soul clan with difficulty. As for the other demigod of the Soul clan, after its energy density was halved, it was beaten up by the 3 girls together. All kinds of divine symbols, mental attacks, and techniques were launched at the demigod. Red Oriole and Moonsong had both received the elementary source items that Long Yu had brought out of the eroding moon ancient domain. However, they were not very effective against the demigod of the Soul clan. They could only use a few of their methods that could damage the soul. Thankfully, when the 3 of them worked together to deal with the demigod of the Soul clan whose energy density had been reduced, it was like 3 adults beating up a child. Although it was troublesome, it was still finished in the end. Its soul was split into pieces, and the consciousness inside it was completely gone. The ball of Tartareth swallowed the body again without any hesitation. Although there was not much soul left, it was better than nothing. After swallowing it, together with the demigod of the Soul clan that it had just swallowed, the ball of Tartareth's effect of slowing down time was finally increased to 9 times. In the end, the demigod of the Soul clan was easy to deal with. However, before anyone realized what was going on, the demigod of the Soul clan suddenly launched a technique. As soon as the technique appeared, circles of mental waves spread out. It could be seen that it had been preparing for a long time. After the technique was unleashed, the mental waves instantly left the blockade of the holy light in the field and fled with the true body of the demigod of the Soul clan. Since it had been within the range of influence of Long Yu's ball of Tartareth, it had taken a lot of time to perform the technique, but it still managed to escape in the end. 3 demigods. This should be the last one. They came through the tunnel of time and space. Why don't we chase after them? Red Oriole narrowed her eyes. She was very unhappy that a demigod of the Soul Clan had escaped and wanted to chase after it. No problem. While talking, Long Yu collected the remains of the small worlds of the 2 demigods of the Soul Clan that had just died. There should be a lot of essence of divine symbols or the essence of the Grand Primordium era, or some other precious materials that could be used to refine pills or weapons. It was still worth searching. After all, it was the remains of the small worlds of demigod experts. Then, Red Oriole began to activate her deduction ability. The secret martial arts technique that she practiced was unique to the Blood Demon clan. After she stepped into the demigod level, the effect was even more obvious. If she used it to deduce the location of a regular cultivator, even if the opponent was far away in the territory of the human race, she would be able to deduce it very quickly. Right now, it did not take her too long to deduce the location of the demigod of the Soul Clan that had escaped. As for the secret martial arts technique that could improve her deduction ability, Red Oriole had taught it to Long Yu after she came out of the eroding moon ancient domain. Although it was a secret of the Blood Demon clan, for Red Oriole, Long Yu was the closest person to her. Long Yu had taught her so many good things and method. This was the only method that Long Yu was interested in. How could she keep it to herself? However, Long Yu had been cultivating other things for a while, so he did not touch the secret martial arts technique named 9 Calculations of the Blood Spirit for now. When Red Oriole was deducing, the Saint Emperor and Moon Song came to Long Yu's side. "Are you all right?" the Saint Emperor asked concernedly. After all, Long Yu was only a level 7 Great Dominator, and he had resisted the demigod of the Soul Clan on his own for such a long time. The Saint Emperor was quite concerned about him. "I'm fine. We have to be careful when we go to the spacetime tunnel. We might run into more demigods of the Soul Clan." Long Yu reminded solemnly, "Of course, the Soul Race's territory is under fierce attack right now. If more demigods of the Soul Race appear on our side, once they are stalled by us, the Soul Race will be destroyed even faster. No matter what, we have to go to the spacetime tunnel this time." Right now, Long Yu had some ability to resist the demigods of the Soul Clan. When he entered the spacetime tunnel for the first time and encountered the 2 demigods of the Ice God clan, Long Yu could only tremble in front of the demigods. If he did not have the sacred item of the Ice God clan with him to buy time, he would have died in the spacetime tunnel a long time ago. It was during that experience that the Void Nether Dragon Blade transformed into a special absolute beginning divine grade. If enough living beings died in the spacetime tunnel, the absolute beginning furnace might appear again. This made Long Yu look forward to it. It would be best if it appeared again so that he could refine the ancient Dragon Bone Tower and make it a special absolute beginning divine grade. If that was the case, Long Yu would have 2 special absolute beginning divine grade. If both of them were awakened to the 12th level, his combat ability would increase greatly. Unfortunately, it was too difficult to awaken this kind of special absolute beginning divine grade item. After all, this kind of battle weapon was even better than a divine source item that had been modified by a high-grade divine source item. With such anticipation, Red Oriole quickly deduced the location of the demigod of the Soul Clan. Then, Long Yu stored the 3 girls into his small world and teleported them in that direction with the Void Nether Dragon Blade. The speed of teleportation was much faster than the speed of the 3 girls. Right now, they could only catch up to the fleeing demigod of the Soul Clan by teleportation. In the blink of an eye, Long Yu and the other 3 girls disappeared from the sky of the 8 grass planet. The 7 generals of the Blood Demon clan, Mountain Well Ruler, and the other warriors of the Blood Demon clan were still in shock. Had the crisis ended just like that? 3 demigods of the Soul Clan attacking the territory of the Blood Demon Clan was already a lot. It seemed that the attack of the alien races had been resolved by the princess and her friends just like that. The news soon reached the ears of Red Maniac, the emperor of the Blood Demon Clan. He was overjoyed when he heard that Red Oriole had stepped into the demigod level. A demigod! The Blood Demon Clan finally had a demigod! Chapter 1628. For a demonic race, once a demigod appeared, it meant that the race would rise. For example, the Heavenly Bat Clan had a demigod, Gaudy, who was one of the top 3 strongest clans in the territory of the demon race. There was also Landslide of the Black Tiger Clan. Under the leadership of the 7 demigods, the 7 demonic clans were the strongest clans in the entire demon race. Now that a demigod had appeared in the Blood Demon Clan, it meant that the comprehensive capability of the entire Blood Demon Clan would be improved by multiple times. Both the training resources and the territory would be greatly improved. For example, the Heavenly Bat Clan governed 2 galaxies, which were the 2 most prosperous galaxies in the entire demon race's territory. Having a demigod meant that the entire race would be stronger. It had become a truth in the entire universe. Be it humans, demons, or the Soul Clan, a clan or an organization that had a demigod would always have an advantage in terms of training resources. That was why Hong Li, the emperor of the Blood Demon Clan, was so happy after receiving the news. However, it was obviously not the time to distribute the training resources. I'm told that the annihilation of the Soul Clan is going well. By then, we should be able to get more territory and training resources from the Soul Clan's territory. Standing next to Hong Li, the 3rd general narrowed his eyes and said, "We can't decide the distribution of resources." Hong Li, however, shook his head. "But I think my daughter will fight for some opportunities for our clan. At least, she won't be any worse than the other demons." "That's right. Congratulations to the Emperor for having such a talented daughter. As expected of the royal bloodline of the Blood Demon Clan." The 3rd general of the Blood Demon Clan laughed. "I did think that she might step into the demigod level, but I didn't expect it to be so fast." Hong Li sighed. "The human next to her is only a 7th-rank Great Dominator, isn't he? It's not something that can be done overnight. It's even possible that he will never be able to step into the demigod level." The 3rd general nodded and said solemnly, "That's right. In my opinion, Her Highness should find a young hero of the Blood Demon Clan and marry him. Their offspring will certainly be talented, too. Chances are that another demigod will be born." Since ancient times, the demigods of the demon race have always been married to their own kind. For example, Lord Gaudy, the demigod of the Heavenly Bat Clan, has 8 guardian generals. It's said that all of them are her spouses. But so far, only 3 offspring have been born. All of them are geniuses and have become the pillars of the Heavenly Bat Clan. It's not easy for demigods to have offspring, not to mention between different races. If the princess marries that human boy, I'm afraid that. The 3rd general's meaning was obvious. "Yes, after this battle is over, I must persuade her." Hong Ran nodded and said, "Even if she insists on being with this human boy, we can arrange for a few of our clan's young geniuses to marry her. It's perfectly normal for demigods to have multiple spouses." When Hong Mang, the emperor of the Blood Demon Clan, was discussing the issue with the 3 generals of the Blood Demon Clan, they did not know the relationship between Long Yu and Red Oriole. Of course, it was impossible for them to know that Red Oriole was able to become a demigod so early because of the ultimate creations that Long Yu brought out of the eroding moon ancient domain. Of course, it was mainly because of Red Oriole's own talents. If the ultimate creations were given to other people of the Blood Demon Clan, no more than 10 of them could advance into the demigod level smoothly. With such a relationship, it was impossible for Red Maniac and the 3rd general to ask Red Oriole to give up Long Yu or accept other males of the Blood Demon Clan. She was a woman who did not stick to one pattern in the first place. Even if she did not have any offspring, it was not a big deal for her. Anyway, she would never betray Long Yu. One had to know that up until now, Long Yu had never been on good terms with any other woman. To Red Oriole, she was very touched. She didn't say it on the surface, but she knew that there were many women in the Star River Void who secretly liked Long Yu. If Long Yu was willing, he would have had many women by now, and she would not have been able to stop him. Of course, if Long Yu wanted other women, Red Oriole would not be too disgusted. It all depended on who the other party was. In any case, Red Oriole knew that it would be difficult for her to have any offspring with Long Yu. However, she did not regret choosing Long Yu. Up until now, Long Yu had been very nice to her. He did not slack off at all. At this moment, Long Yu, together with the three women, had reached the space-time pathway where the Legion of the Soul Race had appeared. 7-colored light appeared in the middle of 2 cultivation planet. It was the space-time pathway that led to the interior of the Soul Race's territory. The 2 cultivation planets near the space-time pathway had already been occupied by the Legion of the Soul Race and the Legion of the Great Sovereign. The members of the Blood Demon clan who had been living on the 2 cultivation planets must have all been killed. Not a single one of them was left alive. We can't let them escape. As the princess of the Blood Demon clan, Red Oriole was filled with fury at this moment. Seeing that the 2 cultivation planets were starting to disintegrate, she knew that hundreds of billions of members of the Blood Demon clan had been killed in an instant. It must be noted that the Sovereign's arcane realm definitely existed on the 2 cultivation planets. In the small worlds of the experts of the Blood Demon clan in the Sovereign's arcane realm, there were also living creatures of the Blood Demon clan. On the 2 cultivation planets, there were about 10 billion members of the Demon clan and the human race. However, if the creatures in the small worlds were included, the casualties would be extremely heavy. It must be noted that the small worlds of the experts in the Sovereign's arcane realm could also give birth to talented experts who would be selected to cultivate in the Outer Heaven's grand worlds. Kill! Long Yu did not hesitate. He directly charged into the spacetime pathway. The escaping demigod expert of the Soul Race had already entered the spacetime pathway. He had also ordered a few legions of the Sovereign to guard the entrance of the spacetime pathway. He wanted them to buy him some time so that he could escape. After all, there were 3 demigod experts chasing after him. Even though they were all new demigods, with the effect of Long Yu's star branding mark, as long as he was stopped, he would die without a doubt. It was a pity that Long Yu did not pay any attention to the legions of the Soul Race's Sovereign. Even though the legions of the Sovereign had set up a spacetime barrier, Long Yu's path of 9 serenities immediately broke through the spacetime barrier. Then, he used void travel and brought the 3 girls into the spacetime pathway. Right now, their main goal was to kill the demigod, and then clean up the legions of the Soul Race's Sovereign and Great Sovereigns in the spacetime pathway. After entering the spacetime pathway, even Long Yu could not use void travel casually. In the spacetime pathway, the divine characters of space were extremely chaotic. Void travel was sometimes far, sometimes close, and sometimes far. There was no way to determine the exact location of the teleportation. There was no need to use it. It was very likely that he would be teleported to the edge of the spacetime pathway. Although Long Yu was definitely not afraid now, it would still be very troublesome if he teleported out. He simply let the 3 girls out. Then, the 4 of them flew into the depths of the spacetime pathway. From afar, the Holy Emperor lashed out with a holy white whip, entangling the soul of the Soul Race demigod far away. For a moment, he could not move. Good job! This control technique was not bad. Although it was not a divinized technique, it prevented the enemy from escaping. Even if it was only for a moment, it was completely enough. Absolute space domain. Long Yu activated the Dragon Bone Tower, and a space sealing barrier appeared. Even with the strength of the Soul Race demigod, It would take him a few seconds to break through the absolute space domain. During this time, the three girls had already surrounded him. Also, Long Yu's sphere of Tartarus had created a small area that slowed down the flow of time. Only the soul race demigod was trapped inside. Red Oriole, the Holy Emperor, and Moon Song were all outside, enjoying the normal flow of time. Under such circumstances, the three girls launched a terrifying attack against the soul race demigod. On the other side of the space-time pathway, no soul race had come over for a long time. After all, they had thought that 3 soul race demigods were enough. They did not need more demigods. Also, there were only 3 demigods gathered near the exit of the space-time pathway. The other demigods of the soul race were all resisting the fierce attacks from the border of the soul race. They had no time to care about the situation here. This time, the soul race had been annihilated by the human race and the demon race. The wine race, which had disappeared for a long time, had reappeared. Moreover, after recuperating for a long time, they had become extremely powerful. They were like a hot knife cutting through butter, causing the soul race to suffer great losses. In order to find an opportunity in desperation, they launched a counterattack plan, which was to ask a few demigods to launch a counterattack on the human race and the demon race's territory according to the coordinates of the human race and the demon race that they had obtained before. In such a way, the enemy's rear line would be disrupted, and they could very likely relieve the pressure near the border of the soul race's territory. It was a pity that the situation in the demon race's territory was wrong. They happened to choose the coordinates of the Blood Demon Galaxy. Then, Long Yu and the 3 demigods were all there. Before the 3 soul race demigods could cause enough damage, the army of the soul race had already been crushed. It was mainly because after the 2 soul race demigods were killed, the remaining combat ability of the enemy could not stop Long Yu and the rest at all. After catching up to the last soul race demigod, with the help of Long Yu's star branding mark, the soul race demigod was killed by the 4 of them in no more than 15 minutes. The 3 girls were not weak at all. Faced with the soul race demigod, whose power density had been reduced, they were domineering and did not give the enemy any chance at all. At this point, the 3 soul race demigods who had invaded the Blood Demon Galaxy had all been killed. Next, I'll lure the other legions of the soul race into the space-time pathway and kill them. Let's see if I can create another primordial furnace. Expectation popped up in Long Yu's eyes. Chapter 1629. The total number of legions of the soul race attacking the territory of the demon race in the Blood Demon Galaxy was not small. There were at least 10 legions of dominators. 2 legions of dominators were still wreaking havoc in the Blood Demon Galaxy. They did not know that their demigod commander had been killed. However, after not receiving any orders from the demigod of the soul race for a while, the legions of dominators were confused. Even the commanders of the legions of dominators were following the orders of the demigod of the soul race. Now that there were no orders, they were at a loss. Originally, the 3 demigods of the soul race intended to break into more cultivation planets so that their subordinates could go on a rampage and kill all the humans and demons on the cultivation planet. It was a pity that they ran into Red Oriole and the rest of the soul race when they arrived at 8 Mang Planet, and the 3 demigods of the soul race were all killed. While the legions of dominators of the soul race were confused, they suddenly saw a demigod of the human race appear in space. It was a demigod of the human race. He had a body and was definitely not a demigod of the soul race. Such a demigod of the human race had descended from the sky and arrived before the legion of dominators who were resting on one of the cultivation planets. On another cultivation planet, a demigod of the demon race had appeared. His arrival made the legion of dominators of the soul race feel panic. Neither Moon Song nor the Saint Emperor killed the legion of dominators of the soul race easily. Instead, they destroyed a small portion of them symbolically. Then, the remaining members of the Legion of Dominators fled back into the spacetime tunnel when they did not receive any response from the demigod of the soul race. Moon Song and the Saint Emperor had intentionally let them escape because Long Yu's plan required the Legion of Dominators of the soul race to die in the spacetime tunnel. The 2 cultivation planets of the Blood Demon clan that had been conquered had been reduced to dust at this moment. Countless humans and demons who had lost their souls and consciousness were lying on the planet. Most of them were members of the Blood Demon clan. When Red Centipede, the emperor of the Blood Demon clan, arrived, there were barely any living creatures left on the 2 cultivation planets, which was a great worry for them. They stared at the colorful pathway in the void with fury. Had it not been for the princess, more than 10 cultivation planets in the entire Blood Demon galaxy would have been taken over. After all, not every cultivation planet had the defense arrays of the demigods from the ancient times and could resist the demigods of the soul race for so long. When the demigod experts guarding the demon clan arrived, the Blood Demon galaxy would definitely suffer heavy losses, which would be a great blow for the Blood Demon clan. What did the demigod of the demon race say? Where is he? Red Ho asked his subordinate. He's already halfway there and should be arriving soon. However, the crisis on our side has already been resolved. Even if that lord were to come over, it wouldn't be of much use, the 3rd general beside Red Mantis muttered. It's fine. That lord has been guarding the Star River all this time. Now that something like this has happened, he will definitely need to come over. Besides, the spacetime corridor is still here. We can't decide what to do next. Red Lotus shook her head. The spacetime corridor was something that could only be created by the demigod experts, and it could only last for a fixed period of time. If the demigod did not come, nobody knew if other demigods of the soul race would show up in the spacetime corridor. If they did, the Blood Demon clan would be faced with another disaster. That's strange. Even if the 3 demigods of the soul race have been killed, the other regular legions of the soul race should still be here. I wonder where they are right now. The 3rd general looked around suspiciously. The 2 cultivation planets were incomparably desolate. The people they had brought with them were packing up the things on these 2 cultivation planets, retrieving all the small worlds of the dead, and taking away all the useful things. Those were all training resources that could not be wasted. The trophies of the soul race dominators who had died on the 2 cultivation planets had all been taken away, too. But what made them suspicious was, where were the other members of the legions of the soul race? Send someone to investigate the spacetime corridor. Remember to report any information. Red Ho gave the order. Immediately, some scouting squads moved toward the entrance of the colorful spacetime corridor. Inside the spacetime corridor, Long Yu and Red Oriole guarded the other end. On one hand, they prevented other experts of the soul race from coming over, and on the other hand, they stopped the legions of the soul race dominators that had been driven back. Very soon, the legions of dominators and great dominators swarmed into the spacetime corridor from the demon race's territory. Die. Without any hesitation, Long Yu threw out the dark flame ghostly chains. Only by completely killing these fellows would the power within their bodies be absorbed by the spacetime passageway and condensed into the absolute beginning furnace at the edge of the spacetime passageway. Hence, Long Yu couldn't be bothered to use the ball of the 9 underworld to absorb these fellows. He wasn't interested in searching the remains of the small worlds either. The value of the resources hidden in the remains of a demigod's small world definitely exceeded that of 10 legions of dominators. Just now, Long Yu had obtained the remains of the small worlds of the 3 soul race dominators. Long Yu's ball of Tartarus had also devoured the remaining souls of the 3 soul race dominators, so he had obtained quite a lot. There was no need to haggle over the remaining legions of soul race dominators on the battlefield. He had to kill them all in one go as quickly as possible. Only then would he have the highest chance of condensing the primordial furnace in the spacetime corridor. Red Oriole, Do you have any war weapons that are compatible with unparalleled and have developed their own consciousness? Long Yu asked. No. Red Oriole was a little puzzled, but she could not be blamed. In reality, it was very difficult for a war weapon to be compatible with unparalleled. Even Long Yu had only been compatible with the Blade of the Void Nether Dragon and the ancient Dragon Bone Tower. For others, even demigods, it was very difficult for them to be compatible with war weapons to be compatible with unparalleled. This depended on luck. Therefore, even if the primordial furnace was condensed, Long Yu was probably the only one who could refine a special war weapon from it. If the ancient Dragon Bone Tower could become a special war weapon, like the Blade of the Void Nether Dragon, it would be a lot more useful to Long Yu. Of course, most of these war weapons could only be used as support. In terms of offensive ability, neither of these two war weapons could compare to the Dark Flame Ghost. The Dark Flame Ghost, a high-grade origin artifact burning with pitch-black flames, whizzed through the battlefield, taking away the consciousness of Soul Race Secret Realm experts one after another. Their minds and souls were completely incinerated and destroyed. Some Soul Race experts chose to self-detonate when they saw this. Unfortunately, the power of their self-detonation was limited in the space-time corridor, and all of it was absorbed by the primordial energy outside the space-time corridor. No matter what these Soul Race experts did, they could not escape from Long Yu and Red Oriole's encirclement. In the battlefield, the enormous image of a pair of blood-colored wings flashed continuously. Countless blood-colored whips were swung by the enormous blood-colored figure. As long as they touched any Soul Race sovereign present, they would be instantly killed. They were not the slightest bit inferior to Long Yu's Dark Flame Ghost. After all, Red Oriole was a demigod. If she wanted to achieve the same efficiency as Long Yu, it would be a piece of cake. In fact, on the whole, the number of Soul Race sovereigns that Red Oriole had killed was slightly more than Long Yu. After all, Long Yu still needed to recover some of his strength. However, demigod experts had an endless supply of energy within their bodies. No matter what method they used, what they used was not their own energy, but the energy of heaven and earth. They did not have to worry about running out of energy. Moreover, Long Yu's Dark Flame Ghost could only extend for a few dozen kilometers at most. This could be said to be the limit. Unless Long Yu could step into the demigod realm, he would not be able to unleash the true power of the Dark Flame Ghost. Red Oriole's innate ability, however, made the blood-colored whips dance wildly. They could attack space hundreds of kilometers away. In the space-time tunnel, the foreign race cultivators in the Soul Race's sovereign's secret realm had nowhere to run. The Soul Race clansmen were killed one after another. They wanted to turn back, but they discovered that the exit of the space-time tunnel had already been blocked by Moonsong and the Holy Emperor. No matter which direction they ran in, they would die. In the face of demigod experts, these ordinary armies of sovereigns and great sovereigns had no ability to resist. It was just like when Long Yu had stalled the two demigods of the Ice God race. 4 armies of sovereigns had stepped into the space-time tunnel, but in the end, not a single one of them had made it out alive. The situation now was more or less the same, except that the roles of hunter and prey had been swapped. Long Yu had become the hunter. The foreign races had become the prey. The energy essence of countless Soul Race experts began to gather at the edge of the space-time tunnel. The entire space-time tunnel was like a slaughterhouse. Although it was very cruel, this was how the war between races was. It was either you die or I die. Everything was for the sake of becoming stronger and obtaining a wider living space. Long Yu was no exception. He was sure that the Sword Race, the Six-Winged Race, and the Machine Race would definitely take action. It was just that their territory was rather far away and they had not arrived yet. Before they arrived, he had to become stronger. He would let these sovereigns of the Soul Race come to pay tribute to Long Yu's Dragon Skeleton Ancient Tower and turn it into a special weapon. This way, Long Yu's overall strength would increase by a lot, and he would be more confident when fighting against the powerful foreign races. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the entire spacetime tunnel had become much quieter. In the originally crowded spacetime tunnel, the minds and souls of the soul race experts were all destroyed and turned into energy. At the edge of the spacetime tunnel, the energy gradually condensed into a body of absolute beginning energy. After tens of thousands, or even more than 100,000 sovereigns of the soul race, the absolute beginning furnace finally condensed again and appeared in front of Long Yu. Chapter 1630. The first time Long Yu encountered the primal beginning furnace was on the battlefield of the outsiders. However, it was outside the territory of the demon race, near the territory of the ice god race. Back then, Long Yu had been inside the absolute beginning furnace, refining the infinite grade nether void dragon blade into a special absolute beginning divine grade weapon. Even now, he had only awakened it to the 3rd level. One could only imagine how difficult it was to awaken it. Now that the primal beginning furnace had appeared again, Long Yu wouldn't miss the chance. He wanted to smelt the dragon bone tower as well. Unfortunately, Moon Song and Red Oriole didn't have peerless unbounded fighters. Otherwise, they would have been able to enter the primal beginning furnace together. Much to Long Yu's surprise, the Sage Emperor had an unbounded class weapon called the 1,000 Feathers of Flight, which was a peerless level of compatibility. However, considering that the Sage Emperor had been separated from them for so long, it was only natural that he would have a peerless level of compatibility with an unbounded class weapon, considering that he had been able to enter a godly relic similar to the eroding moon ancient region and become a demigod. A special primal beginning divine grade weapon, smelted by the primal beginning furnace, had a very strong comprehensive ability. Although it wasn't very good in terms of attack and defense, it was definitely better than some modified divine source grade weapons in other aspects. Just like that, Long Yu and the Sage Emperor entered the edge of the spacetime tunnel. Long Yu had no problems at all. He could move through the chaotic streams of primordial force just by turning into nothingness. Saint Emperors had no problems either after reaching the level of demigod. Soon, the two of them sent their unparalleled infinite-grade weapon into the primal beginning furnace and waited outside. Compared to the first time he had refined the Void Spirit Dragon Blade, Long Yu was much calmer this time around when he was refining the ancient Dragon Bone Tower. The power of the dead soul race experts was constantly being absorbed into the primal beginning furnace, which was then fused into the Dragon Bone Tower and the 1,000 Feathers of Flight. What surprised Long Yu was that during the smelting process, he gradually formed a connection with the 1,000 Feathers of Flight. The Sage Emperor also raised her head at this moment and glanced at Long Yu. Clearly, she had also sensed the self-consciousness of the Dragon Skeleton Tower. These two unending battle weapons, which had been fused to the same level, were now fusing together in the primeval furnace. This gave Long Yu a fright. He didn't want that to happen. If that was the case, who would the combat weapon belong to? He was unwilling to lose the ancient Dragon Bone Tower, and the Sage Emperor was definitely unwilling to lose the 1,000 Feathers of Flight. However, the situation in the ancient furnace was something that the two of them could not do anything about. They could only resign themselves to fate. If we had known this would happen, we wouldn't have come in at the same time. Long Yu was a little puzzled. Let's see what's going on first. The Sage Emperor didn't look too good either, but she was a little more open-minded than Long Yu. There was even a special emotion in her that made her look forward to it. As time passed, the power of the entire ancient furnace of absolute beginning was absorbed by the ancient Dragon Skeleton Tower and the 1,000 Feathers of Flight. Then, the two were smelted into a battle weapon in the ancient furnace of absolute beginning. It was 1,000 dragon skeletal feathers. The snow-white feathers were fused with the dragon skeleton, and the consciousness of both sides also fused. When the battle weapon finally appeared in front of the two of them, they both felt a little awkward. This was because the battle weapon had separated after leaving the ancient furnace, becoming the 1,000 feathers of flight and the ancient dragon bone tower again. However, the self-consciousness of both had fused into one. Originally, the self-consciousness of the ancient dragon bone tower had been a little boring and mechanical, while the self-consciousness of the 1,000 feathers of flight was a mischievous little girl. Now, the two had fused into a new consciousness. Moreover, this new consciousness could connect with the consciousness of Long Yu and the Sage Emperor at the same time. Under such circumstances, Long Yu and the Sage Emperor could actually know each other's thoughts. Originally, there was no barrier between the battle weapon and the cultivator that was unparalleled, but now there was no barrier between Long Yu and the Sage Emperor. Long Yu and the Sage Emperor looked at each other, feeling a little awkward. This was because the two of them could clearly know what the other was thinking. At this time, Long Yu felt that the Sage Emperor actually had a competitive thought towards him. This thought seemed to have been born in the divine battle world. When Long Yu became the Lord of Tartarus, he left the Sage Emperor behind. However, after the Sage Emperor left Long Yu to explore on his own, he became a demigod one step ahead of Long Yu. At this moment, Long Yu could feel all the difficulties that the Sage Emperor had gone through, as well as the dangers that he had encountered in the relics of the gods in the eroding moon ancient domain. All these memories were clearly sensed by Long Yu. The Sage Emperor's experience could be said to be a narrow escape from death. Naturally, the Sage Emperor also sensed the memories in Long Yu's mind. Everything that happened in the Demigod College, when he participated in the eroding moon ancient domain, the dangers that he had experienced, and the scenes that he had encountered in the depths of the eroding moon ancient domain were all seen by the Sage Emperor. Furthermore, the Sage Emperor already knew about the things that Long Yu had never mentioned to anyone before. In the depths of the eroding moon ancient domain, the young human who looked very similar to both Long Yu and Yi Ziwei was also seen by the Sage Emperor. She felt that it was unimaginable and couldn't help but ask, "Is this the son of Yu and Yi Ziwei? Now that you can see my memories, you should be able to see all of them. So, I don't know what's going on either." Long Yu shook his head and said in a low voice, "That's true. I didn't see anything between you and Yi Ziwei, I only saw you and Red Oriole." At this point, the Sage Emperor blushed and couldn't even finish his sentence. "Ahem, let's study these two battle weapons first." Long Yu was also a bit embarrassed and quickly changed the topic. Although the two battle weapons had been separated, their consciousnesses were still connected. They had completely formed their own consciousnesses, like a solemn young lady who was currently feeling strange about the changes in her body. This solemn young lady's consciousness also possessed the memories of the two consciousnesses from before, so she needed some time to digest them. When Long Yu and the Sage Emperor turned their attention to the battle weapons, the solemn young lady's consciousness had already understood the memories from before. "Looks like we've fused. The ancient dragon bone tower and the 1,000 feathers of flight are now a thing of the past. The current me is called the 1,000 feathers of dragon bone." The young lady's solemn consciousness was transmitted into the minds of Long Yu and the Sage Emperor at the same time. "But you've clearly been separated." Long Yu pointed at the battlefield. The ancient dragon bone tower and the 1,000 feathers of flight had been separated, but they both contained the consciousness of the solemn young lady. "We can still fuse them." The young lady's meticulous thoughts were transmitted. Then, the two of them saw the ancient dragon bone tower and the 1,000 feathers of flight separate and finally fuse into 1,000 feathers that covered the dragon skeleton, which were the 1,000 feathers of dragon bone. These two battle weapons were originally special absolute beginning divine quality. Now that they were fused together, they became even more special. After fusing the two combat weapons together, the overall power of the combat weapon had increased by several times. The two of them did not know the exact power of the combat weapon, but without a doubt, it could become a trump card for the two of them. After all, it was an existence that most people had never even heard of, special absolute beginning divine quality, were already very rare. Before the Void Spirit Dragon Dagger, there was only one demigod expert in the entire human and demon territories who had one. Now, there were two more, and they could even be fused together. I need to awaken quickly, the young lady's consciousness said to Long Yu and the Sage Emperor solemnly. Let's call you Thousand Feathers. Do you know how to awaken quickly? Long Yu asked. You can use me in battle. The stern young lady's consciousness replied seriously. Then she said, Of course you have to fight together. If you use me, the speed of my awakening will be at least 2 times faster. Also, I don't like the name Thousand Feathers. It's better to call me Dragon Feather. Long Yu and the Sage Emperor looked at each other in confusion. No matter who it was, this was probably the first time they had seen such a proud battle weapon consciousness. But since she wanted to be called Dragon Feather, so be it. It sounded similar to Long Yu's name, but with a different tone. As for why the young lady preferred the name Dragon Feather instead of Thousand Feathers, it might have something to do with the inheritance of the ancient Dragon Bone Tower. The ancient Dragon Bone Tower was a battle weapon created by the Jiryo Dragon Emperor, so it should have had its own consciousness. That consciousness should have something to do with the inheritance of the dragon race. All in all, the fusion of the battle weapons seemed to be a good thing. If they fought together, the speed of awakening would be twice as fast. The only troublesome thing was that Long Yu and the Sage Emperor could sense each other's thoughts. It was fine normally, but if Long Yu and Red Oriole were doing something strange, wouldn't it be especially awkward? When Long Yu thought of this, the Sage Emperor couldn't help but blush. She coughed and said, Don't mind me. Do whatever you want. I won't tell anyone. Her snow-white hair fluttered in the wind. Her beautiful face was blushing, making her look very cute. She stood still in the turbulent flow of the 5-colored primordial energy. The power of the white divine characters flowed around her body, making her look even more alluring. Long Yu shifted his gaze away, otherwise, he would feel a little awkward. Fortunately, he didn't sense any feelings of love from the Sage Emperor's thoughts. Otherwise, it would be even more awkward. Long Yu didn't know how to deal with this. In his mind, he only wanted to have a wife. Even though it was normal for experts to have more wives in this world where martial prowess reigned supreme, Long Yu didn't want to let Red Oriole down. After all, there was only one love. The more people he gave, the less everyone would get. Chapter 1631. Very soon, Long Yu and the Saint Emperor put away their weapons and returned to the space-time pathway from the edge of the pathway. Long Yu told Red Oriole and Moon Song about the fusion of the weapons. After all, when they fought together in the future, the fusion of the weapons would be a common occurrence. So, there was no need to keep it a secret. As for the connection of their memories, Long Yu did not mention it yet. Naturally, the Saint Emperor would not mention it either. After all, it was a special thing. If he wanted to tell other people about it, he would have to think about it first. Most importantly, Long Yu was worried that Red Oriole might have misunderstood him. The space-time pathway will exist for 3 days. We have to stay here for the time being. Otherwise, if other members of the Soul Clan come, they will cause even greater damage to the Blood Demon Clan, said Long Yu to everybody. Then, he began to distribute the trophies. Since he had killed some demigod experts of the Soul Clan many times, Long Yu had obtained a lot of Essence of Shadow, Essence of Life, and Essence of the Wood class. Considering that they were mainly going to fight against the Soul Clan, it was not a bad idea to fuse the Essence of Origin of Wood into the congenital technique. It was worth mentioning that extracting the essence of divine power or essence of origin that had been fused from the congenital techniques would cause a certain loss to the essence. Any essence would lose its effect after being extracted 3 times from the congenital technique. In the small worlds of the demigods of the soul race, some of the essence of the divine runes and the essence of the primordial era had already been extracted twice. Now that Long Yu took them out of the remains of the small worlds, they immediately lost their effectiveness and turned into ashes. Even so, after killing enough demigods of the Soul Clan, the essence of divine power and essence of origin that they had obtained would be enough for the 4 of them to fill up their congenital technique. Any congenital techniques that were offensive would have the ability to destroy the soul after being fused with the essence of origin of wood. For Red Oriole, Moon Song, and the Saint Emperor, the essence of origin of wood was the one that had been fused the most, followed by the essence of life. As for the shadow essence, Long Yu was the only one among the 4 who could use it. But it didn't matter. He could use the extra shadow essence as a resource reserved for the Void Galaxy's forces. After all, it wasn't easy to obtain the Divine Text Essence and the Primordium Essence. They could only be obtained when killing demigod experts. It was really difficult to obtain much in other ways. It would take decades or even centuries for the Divine Text Essence and the Primordium Essence to be born naturally. The Divine Text Essence and the Primordium Essence that he had now had all been accumulated along the way. The 4 of them had melted the essence of the Primordium era and the essence of the Divine Language into their congenital technique. Their comprehensive combat ability as demigods was even higher than Long Yu's. But no matter what Long Yu's 8th magical ability, the slowing down of the flow of time from the Ball of 9 Underworlds and the effect of the Xian branding mark in the ancient god's brain domain, was something that no one else could replace. These 2 abilities, at the current stage, belonged exclusively to Long Yu. The Jade Brand was not that bad. It was the ancient god's mark that he got from the eroding moon ancient domain. In the 3 space zones nearby, it was possible that other demigods had opened the ancient god brain domain and had similar or even stronger ancient gods marks. But the Sphere of 9 Serenities was a technique that very few people had. Sphere of 9 Serenities. Long Yu condensed the Sphere of 9 Serenities nearby and covered himself in it. Then, he began to concentrate on consolidating his cultivation. More than half of his power as a 7th phase Great Sovereign had been consolidated. If this situation continued, he would be able to break through to the demigod level in a few days without any worries. At that time, Long Yu would welcome a metamorphosis. In the space constructed by the Sphere of 9 Serenities, where the flow of time was slowed down, Long Yu quickly consolidated his cultivation. 3 days had passed in the space, but only 10 to 10 hours had passed in the outside world. After all, the Sphere of 9 Serenities had slowed down the flow of time by almost 10 times. When it kept swallowing demigods, the Sphere of 9 Serenities was getting more and more powerful. It was a pity that the improvement of the devouring demigods was not very significant. There was no telling whether or not the alien demigods with a higher power density would bring some surprises to Long Yu. At this moment, a group of people ran in from the entrance of the space-time pathway that was close to the territory of the demon race. In the lead was a demigod expert in a black robe. His face was rather gloomy, but he was very strong. The power density was 17 times. He was the demigod who had been rushing to the Blood Demon Galaxy earlier. However, he had arrived rather late. Nothing had happened in the battlefield. They had all been taken care of by Long Yu and the other 3. In the space-time pathway, the aura of countless dead soul race members could be clearly sensed. The grand primordium power outside the space-time pathway was extremely chaotic. The grand primordium furnace, on the other hand, had already dispersed after losing its energy supply. The refinement of the Dragon Bone Tower and the 1,000 Feathers of Flight had already consumed the life energy of 100,000 soul race dominators. Master Ghost Crow, seeing that the demigod expert in a black robe had led the crowd over, the Saint Emperor, Red Oriole, and Moon Song all stood up and greeted him. Long Yu also walked out of the area where the flow of time was slowed down. He glanced at the demigod and nodded. "Junior Long Yu greets you, Senior. You are Long Yu. Not bad, not bad. As a demigod of the demigod race, Ghost Crow had naturally heard of Long Yu's name. After all, Long Yu was the one who had started the annihilation of the soul race. You are indeed an unprecedented genius to be able to reach this level as a level 7 great dominator. However, you can't slack off. If you don't become a demigod, you won't be an expert. You have to work harder. Ghost Crow's face was dark and expressionless. However, it was obvious that he admired Long Yu. It was just that he seemed to have a poker face and was not very good at expressing his emotions. This demigod of the demigod race was the second strongest expert of the demigod race. He had cultivated for 300 years to achieve 17 times the density of the energy. I will work hard. Long Yu nodded. Naturally, there was no doubt about it. Behind Ghost Crow was an army of 3 demigods of the Black Crow demigod race. Red Ho of the Blood Demon race was also behind him with many demigods. Seeing that the entire space-time tunnel had been cleared, he was shocked. He was not like Ghost Crow, who knew that Long Yu becoming a demigod was only a matter of time. He was still thinking about how to convince Red Oriole to accept the other young talents of the Blood Demon race. However, in such an occasion, even the Emperor of the Blood Demon race, Red Ho, did not have the right to speak. Ghost Crow raised his hand and said expressionlessly, "Red Oriole, Moon Song, Saint Emperor, why don't you come with me to the territory of the soul race and kill the enemies? The 4 of us can definitely kill some demigods of the soul race easily and contribute to the annihilation of the soul race." He raised his head and looked at the other exit of the space-time tunnel. It was colorful and filled with the intimidating spiritual aura of the soul race. It seemed that the demigods were too tired of guarding the territory of the demon race and wanted to go to the territory of the soul race to kill the enemies. If something big happened deep inside the territory of the soul race, it could have a critical impact on the annihilation of the entire soul race. Ghost Crow did not want to make contributions. He simply wanted to kill the enemies. The annihilation of the soul race was an unprecedented battle that was hard to come by. He did not want to miss such a grand occasion and wanted to participate in it in person. But if the space-time tunnel is left unguarded? Red Oriole hesitated. After all, the Blood Demon Galaxy was right outside the space-time tunnel. If they were having a great time in the territory of the soul race, and other demigods of the soul race snuck into the Blood Demon Galaxy and sabotaged them, it would be a great loss. Long Yu can guard it first. With his capability, he is more than enough to stall the demigods of the soul race, right? Ghost Crow said to Long Yu. He was still expressionless and indifferent. It's not a problem for me to guard it, but if anything unexpected happens, you must come back as soon as possible. Long Yu said casually. It was not a problem for him to stall the demigods, but it would be difficult to kill them. Also, the space-time tunnel can only last for 2.5 days. You must come back before the space-time tunnel disappears. Otherwise, if you are trapped in the territory of the soul race, even the 4 of you will be easily killed. Okay. Ghost Crow nodded. He knew that what Long Yu said was reasonable, so he did not try to pressure Long Yu with his demigod status. Also, he knew very well that once Long Yu stepped into the demigod level, his strength would directly surpass his own and reach a level that he would never be able to catch up to. Then let's go. Ghost Crow only took Red Oriole, Moon Song, and the Holy Emperor with him. The 4 of them flew toward the other end of the space-time tunnel and soon disappeared from the colorful exit. At first, Long Yu was a bit worried. But now that he could communicate with the Holy Emperor telepathically, no matter what happened, Long Yu would know immediately and react accordingly. Also, if anything happened on Long Yu's side, he would be able to inform the Holy Emperor and the others immediately. After the 4 demigod experts left, the remaining 3 Dominator legions of the Black Crow demons set up camp in the space-time tunnel, ready to guard it. They did not know who Long Yu was or why Lord Ghost Crow was so respectful to him, but they still felt that they were the main force to guard the space-time tunnel. After all, they were the three most elite legions of the Black Crow demon race, and they had all risked their lives on the battlefield of the alien races. The people of the Blood Demon race, led by Red Mantis, walked toward Long Yu, as if they wanted to say something to Long Yu. However, Long Yu did not want to talk to them. Red Oriole was not here, and he did not know what to say to those people. Right now, the most important thing for him was to break into the demigod level as soon as possible. In the area where time was slowed down in the sphere of Tartarus, his cultivation was consolidated very quickly. It's about time. When the space-time tunnel is about to disappear, I can try to break into the demigod level. Expectation popped up in Long Yu's eyes. Chapter 1632. When Long Yu began to consolidate his cultivation, Hong Rong and the rest of the generals all came to him. They stopped in the void of the space-time tunnel not too far away from Long Yu and looked at the 9 underworld sphere beside Long Yu. The pitch-black energy radiating from it covered Long Yu's entire body, and Long Yu seemed to be cultivating. This caused them to frown. What do we do now? Should we go talk to him? The third general stopped next to Hong Rong and asked, frowning. Hong Rong hesitated too. According to his personality, he would have gone up and talked to Long Yu directly. However, Ghost Crow, a demigod expert, had been very appreciative of Long Yu, which gave him other ideas. Did the boy have a lot of secrets that nobody knew? It would be inappropriate to talk to Long Yu just like that. Apart from everything else, Hong Rong still cared about his relationship with his daughter, Red Oriole. He hadn't seen Red Oriole for more than a year, and he missed her very much. Now that he had finally met her, he did not want to be too impulsive, in case his relationship with his daughter was affected in any way. Not just from the perspective of relationship, Red Oriole was an expert in the demigod level right now. If Hong Rong were not her father, he would not be qualified to influence Red Oriole's decision at all, much less ask her to give up Long Yu and choose other young talents of the Blood Demon clan. Thinking for a moment, Hong Rong shook his head. Forget it. Leave some people to guard the space pathway. The rest of you go back to Bagmang and rebuild the 2 cultivation planets nearby. Let's not waste any more time here. Understood. The third general accepted the order and left the space pathway with a few legions of lords. Mountain Welchi and the 7th general came to Hong Rong's side. Your Majesty, this Long Yu is definitely not weak, Mountain Welchi said to Hong Rong. Mountain Well Ruler said to Red Scorpion, I saw him stall the demigod of the soul race first so that the princess had time to send us away. Otherwise, the demigod of the soul race could have killed 10,000 more of us with a random attack. He's only a rank 7 sovereign. Are you sure he can stall a demigod by himself? Hong Tao asked with narrowed eyes. Didn't Lord Guiyu just say that? The 7th general sighed. Lord Guiyu believes in Long Yu, so it's best if we don't doubt him. Moreover, I saw the battle on 8 Mang's star with my own eyes. He is indeed very strong. Strength is one thing, inheritance is another. Red Maniac shook his head. There are too many unfortunate cases of the Blood Demon clan marrying human beings. The main reason is that it is impossible for them to have offspring. In any case, this Long Yu is just a rank 7 sovereign cultivator. The gap between him and a demigod is too huge. Of course, it's not convenient for me to speak with Long Yu right now. I'll have to wait for Red Oriole to return before I can discuss this with her. Even if it's for the continuation and future of our race, she should still choose a few of our race's young talents. Then let's wait for the princess to return. The 7th general didn't think that Red Maniac was wrong. If it were the old Red Oriole, they wouldn't have thought like that. They would have forced Red Oriole to leave Long Yu a long time ago. But now, Long Yu had demonstrated extremely strong combat ability, and Red Oriole had become a demigod. Even if they wanted to, they could only use the tone of discussing with Red Oriole instead of forcing her. If Red Oriole was unwilling, it would be useless no matter what they said. This was a demigod. Once one stepped into the demigod realm, he would have transcended the mortal world and stepped into the peak of this universe. Compared to other cultivators, he would have a completely different status and right to speak. Naturally, Long Yu didn't know what Red Maniac and the others were talking about. His 9 Serenities ball's area of slowing down the flow of time only covered him, so the flow of time in the area around him was almost 1/10 of that in the outside world. In other words, if Long Yu cultivated in the area of slowing down the flow of time for 10 days, only 1 day would have passed in the outside world. His cultivation had been mostly consolidated in the first place. From the battle in the Void Galaxy to the month of consolidation in the Soul Race's territory until now, he felt that his cultivation as a rank 7 sovereign had basically been completely consolidated. Maybe he could try to break into the demigod realm before the space-time tunnel disappeared. With the help of the slowing down of the flow of time, Long Yu's cultivation speed was absolutely astonishing when compared to others. Red Maniac and the others didn't wait long. Long Yu, on the other hand, kept cultivating while paying attention to the situation of the spacetime tunnel. He also made sure that he was in contact with the Saint Emperor. After their battle weapons fused together, their consciousnesses were completely fused. No matter how far away they were from each other, they would be able to sense each other's existence, as well as know each other's situation. This kind of situation was equivalent to having a perfect fusion with a battle weapon, and it was even more magical than that. After all, their consciousnesses were not directly connected but connected through the consciousness of the Dragonbone Thousand Feathers. After leaving the spacetime tunnel, Guaya, together with the 3 women, 4 demigod experts, stirred up trouble in the territory of the Soul Race. Just like the 3 demigods of the Soul Race in the Blood Demon Galaxy, they massacred the training planets nearby. There was no such thing as mercy between alien races. The Soul Race could treat the blood demons of the Blood Demon Galaxy so cruelly and slaughter all the blood demons on the 2 training planets. Naturally, they could do the same to the Soul Race. It was needless to say that Long Yu had done a lot of such things on his own. He could gather some of the techniques of Tartarian Hunter and project them to some of the weaker training planets. Then, the Soul Race on the training planets would be completely slaughtered. Guaya and the other 3 did not split up, mainly because they were afraid that they would fall into the enemy's trap. Therefore, when the 4 of them joined hands, they slaughtered very quickly. In just half a day, they had already cleared most of the Soul Race on the 4 training planets. A few of the Soul Race escaped through the teleportation arrays, but very soon, the teleportation arrays were completely sealed. Just like in the Blood Demon Galaxy, the 4 demigods were not allowed to teleport to other training planets directly to reduce their losses and buy more time for the demigod experts of the Soul Race to come and help. It was a pity that the entire territory of the Soul Race was under attack from all directions. It was not going to be easy to spare manpower to deal with them. Besides, in the previous war, the demigods of the Soul Race had suffered heavy casualties. 6 demigods of the Soul Race were killed at the beginning, and 3 more were killed in the Blood Demon Galaxy. Also, the demigods of the Soul Race were dying at the borders of other territories, too. To put it simply, since the beginning of the war, the weaker demigods of the Soul Race had basically all been killed. The remaining half of the demigods were experts whose strength density was more than 15 times. Some of them even had a strength density more than 20 times. Faced with the Wine Clan, the Human Race, the Demon Race, and the Ice God Clan and the Earth God Clan who were taking advantage of the situation at the same time, the territory of the Soul Race was filled with the flames of war. It was not going to be easy to distribute the remaining half of the demigods as much as possible. Of course, the Soul Race would not leave Guaya and the other 3 demigods who had gone deep into the territory of the Soul Race. They must have taken action against them, but there was no telling how they were going to do it. It was very likely that they would send some demigods of the soul race who were not particularly strong to stall them. After all, they had gone through the space-time pathway. If they were stalled and prevented from leaving, the four of them would probably die in the territory of the soul race. Even if a few armies of dominators surrounded them and detonated themselves, the spiritual swirls would be enough to completely swallow the four of them and destroy their souls and consciousness. Long Yu had been in contact with the Saint Emperor the whole time. Long Yu knew that the Saint Emperor and the others were not in any trouble for now, and the Saint Emperor also knew that Long Yu was already preparing to break into the demigod level. 2 days later, the space-time pathway was about to disappear, and Gueye and the others planned to return. After all, it was impossible for them to really be trapped in the depths of the soul race's territory. In any case, they had already destroyed almost 10 cultivation planets. This operation was already very profitable. It was very likely that some demigod experts on the other side had been stalled, so the battle at the border of the soul race's territory was even more unstoppable. The overall strategic significance was very obvious. At this time, Long Yu was already breaking into the demigod level. He still had 2 supreme quality creations on him, which were the rewards he had obtained from the eroding moon ancient domain. He had not used them yet, and the power of creation contained in the 2 supreme quality creations was enough for him to expand his small world to 100 billion kilometers. As Long Yu absorbed the 2 supreme quality creations, the power of the divine characters of space and time gradually appeared beside him. The speed of time began to change, causing the entire space to distort irregularly. Long Yu had some understanding of the power of time in the first place. When his small world expanded to 100 billion kilometers, all the power in his body was undergoing a transformation. The power that was originally rather loose was now condensing continuously. This process was the process of increasing the density of power. As the space around him twisted, the cultivators of the Black Crow Demon Clan and the Blood Demon Clan, who were still in the space-time pathway, all looked at him strangely. They had never seen such a scene before. To become a demigod, one had to condense the density of power from 1 time to 10 times. That was the most basic thing. Generally speaking, it would take a lot of time to condense the density of power from 1 time to 10 times. Few people would break through into the demigod level in a space-time pathway, and there would not be tens of thousands of people watching. However, at this moment, Long Yu knew that he should not be in danger. After all, the space-time pathway was about to disappear, and Gueye and the others would return very soon. When they returned and saw this situation, they would naturally protect him during the breakthrough. Chapter 1633. 1 time. 1.5 times. 2 times. Long Yu's strength density finally began to slowly rise. This process was completely due to the expansion of the small world's territory to 100 billion miles. Then, the small world's world energy had completely fused with his strength, bringing about a change. The reason why he needed to consolidate his cultivation was that the power of the small world could only be melted into his body after his cultivation was completely consolidated, thereby increasing his strength density by 10 times. The compression force from the power of the world completely squeezed the strength inside Long Yu's body together. As the strength density increased, the power that the strength could really burst out increased explosively. Basically, after stepping into the demigod level, it was more difficult for a practitioner to increase their basic strength. Instead, they had to train to increase the strength density. When they just stepped into the demigod level, the increase of strength density was brought by the power of the world. However, if they wanted to increase the strength density, they had to practice some special secret arts. Those secret arts were not easy to come by. Not everybody could practice any of them. The requirements were very strict. Therefore, the Saint Emperor, Red Oriole, and consort you were still new demigods, and their strength density was only 10 times. It was very difficult to find a secret art that was suitable for them to increase their strength density. Of course, that was not what Long Yu should be thinking about right now. After all, after they stepped into the demigod level, there would often be special opportunities for them to find such secret arts, which were similar to the places in the eroding moon ancient domain. If they explored those places, it was possible for them to perceive the secret arts that were suitable for them. Those special places, on the other hand, were not open yet. Therefore, this batch of new demigods were still new demigod. It was basically impossible for them to increase their strength density, unless they had some other fortuitous encounters. Under such circumstances, the effect of the jade branding pattern in Long Yu's head was obvious. It was safe to say that the jade branding pattern was a great weapon for him to challenge people of a higher level. It also made Long Yu realize that in the battles in the future, strength density would be everything. Whether or not to open the ancient god brain region, as well as what kind of ancient god pattern and ancient god seal were in the ancient god brain region, would be the biggest factors that would affect the outcome of the battle. Even if Long Yu was mediocre in other aspects, just by relying on the jade branding mark, he would be able to challenge experts whose strength density was 20 times higher when he had just stepped into the demigod realm, and such experts would basically be one of the strongest existences in a foreign race. Currently, among the human clan and the demon clan, there were only 2 people whose strength density had reached 20 times. And these 2 people, Long Yu had never seen them before. They were the true leaders of the demon clan and the human clan. Long Yu had just stepped into the demigod level, but he was already able to reduce his enemy's strength density by half in a battle so that his enemy's strength density was equal to his own. Then, he could try to defeat his enemy through other methods. No new demigod had ever been able to do that. At this moment, as the density of Long Yu's energy continued to increase, the distortion of the space around him became more and more severe. The tens of thousands of sovereigns of the Black Crow Demon tribe and the Blood Demon tribe were all dumbfounded. What was this guy doing exactly? Even the advancement of other demigods wouldn't have happened to Long Yu. The main reason was that there was the 8th technique inside Long Yu's body, the Dark Abyss Ball. Under the influence of the transformation of the Dark Abyss Ball, the space around him had become twisted. When I step into the demigod level, I can even awaken a deified technique. The deified technique is actually the Dark Abyss Ball. Long Yu was quite surprised at this moment. He felt the same feeling when he killed an opponent in the chaotic battle on the 5th floor of the eroding moon ancient domain. A technique transforming into a deified technique was a very strange and unique feeling. He couldn't have been wrong about it. Therefore, he was sure that his Dark Abyss Ball had become a deified technique. Originally, he thought that it would be some other mystique like the Eye of Darkness that would become a deified mystique, but he didn't expect that the Sphere of Underworld would become a new deified mystique, which made him very happy. In his heart, the strongest mystique was undoubtedly the Sphere of Underworld. Now that the Dark Abyss Ball had become a deified technique, what kind of effect would it have? Long Yu didn't know. After all, the density of his strength was still increasing. It would take some time for him to truly break into the demigod level. It was also at this time that bad news suddenly came from the Saint Emperor who was connected to Long Yu's mind. Long Yu clearly felt that the Holy Emperor, the other 2 women, and Gui Ye seemed to have run into very strong beings and were blocked on the other side of the space-time tunnel. They couldn't return for a while, and the space-time tunnel was about to disappear. If they couldn't return in time, it was very likely that the 4 of them would be trapped in the depths of the Soul Race's territory and slowly die of exhaustion. In fact, they didn't even need to expend any energy, because Long Yu sensed through the Saint Emperor that there were 3 demigods of the Soul Race, and one of them was one of the top 3 experts of the Soul Race, a super expert known as Soul King Tian Gu, whose power density was 23 times higher than normal. The existence of Soul King Tian Gu alone put a lot of pressure on Guiye and the other three. The four of them might not be able to defeat him even if they worked together, not to mention that Soul King Tian Gu led 2 demigod experts whose strength density was 16 times and 17 times. The 3 demigod experts of the soul race appeared on their way back without warning and then launched an attack. It was obvious that they wanted to take this opportunity to kill the 4 of them. Guiye and the others didn't expect that Soul King Tian Gu would appear to stop them. Even if there were 4 of them, they might not be able to return alive. You guys hold on. You must be careful and focus on defense. I'll be there soon. Long Yu gritted his teeth and reminded the Holy Emperor through the consciousness of the battle soldier. The Holy Emperor could also sense Long Yu's current state and knew that he was at the critical moment of a breakthrough. His strength density had already increased to about 5 times. Once Long Yu's strength density increased to 10 times, he would have the strength to fight against alien demigods whose strength density was 20 times. Moreover, the influence of the Jade branding mark could weaken Soul King Tian Gu. If they worked together, they might be able to kill him completely. This was an opportunity that they couldn't miss. Of course, the prerequisite was that they had to hold on until Long Yu arrived. It would take about another 2 hours for Long Yu to complete his breakthrough, and this was under the effect of the Sphere of 9 Hells slowing down the flow of time. If it weren't for the fact that the flow of time was slowed down, Long Yu would need at least another 20 hours to complete the breakthrough. I have to be faster. At this time, Long Yu activated all the strength in his body and actively fused with the power of his world. In this way, he could save a bit of time, and it would be best if he could get there earlier. The other party's location was not very far from the exit of the spacetime tunnel. As long as Long Yu left the spacetime tunnel and used the Void Dragon Blade to travel through the void more than 10 times, he would be able to get there. The key now was that Long Yu had to make the breakthrough first. If he gave up halfway through the breakthrough, it could be said that all his previous efforts would be in vain. Not only would he not be able to reach 10 times the density of power, it would also be extremely difficult for him to step into the demigod level in the future. After all, a territory of 100 billion square kilometers was already the limit of the small world. It was even more difficult to expand further, and the power of the world had all been used to increase the density of power. Long Yu and the Holy Emperor were telepathically connected, and they could both know the state of the other. And now, the Ghost Crow demigod who had suggested to clean up the territory of the soul race was sweating profusely. He had completely turned into a pitch-black crow, and the shadow of a giant black bird flashed continuously behind him. A total of 5 Divine Eyes techniques were being used alternately. Moreover, the Ghost Crow used a Divine Martial technique and a beginner-level modified quasi-divinity source item to finally work together with the Holy Emperor to stop Soul King Tian Gu. As for the other 2 demigod experts of the soul race, Red Oriole and Moon Song blocked them separately. However, it was obvious that the 2 women's density of power was much lower than the enemy's, and they could not resist the enemy's attacks at all. They could only keep retreating. If it weren't for the fact that both of them had divine source items from the eroding moon ancient region that Long Yu had given them, they would have been killed in no time. Fortunately, divine source items that had been modified at the elementary level were not cabbages that could be found anywhere. Among the 3 demigods of the soul race, only Soul King Tian Gu had a beginner-level modified quasi-divinity source item. The other 2 demigods did not have any. Beginner-level modified quasi-divinity source items could only be obtained in the advanced areas of the Eclipse Moon Ancient region. Also, after obtaining them, they had to survive the final battle of the Eclipse Moon Ancient region and bring them out. If the soul race had mid-level modified quasi-divinity source items, they would have probably expanded their territory to the outside world a long time ago. This was also the limit of the soul race's strength. For Long Yu, Obtaining quasi-divinity source items from the Eclipse Moon ancient region seemed very easy, but for other people, it was very difficult. After all, the quasi-divinity source items in the Eclipse Moon ancient region would be fought over by hundreds of alien geniuses in the 3 space zones. This bought some time for Long Yu. With the help of the quasi-divinity source item, Red Oriole and Moon Song resisted the enemy's attack. Also, what Red Oriole had was a mid-level modified quasi-divinity source item that Long Yu had specially given her. It was called Roaming Soul, and it happened to be a quasi-divinity source item that was full of spiritual and soul power. It was the most suitable item to deal with the demigods of the soul race. Red Oriole did not have to use it when she was in the Blood Demon Galaxy. But now, in the face of life and death, Red Oriole had to show her strongest strength. Otherwise, she might not be able to see Long Yu again. Chapter 1634. In the depths of the Soul Race's territory. The demigod Ghost Crow, the new demigod Red Oriole, the Holy Emperor, and Moon Song were all stopped by the Soul King Tiangu, a demigod expert of the Soul Race. They could not return to the spacetime tunnel they had come from and were caught in a deadly battle. Roaming Soul. Soul Wall. Red Oriole possessed this mid-grade modified divine source artifact. At this moment, it had transformed into 7 layers of mental barriers that enveloped her entire body, protecting her entire body. Outside the soul wall, a demigod of the soul race whose strength density was 16 times higher was constantly releasing terrifying waves of mental and soul attacks at her. The waves almost caused the space to tremble and shattered the 7 layers of mental barriers one by one. Although Red Oriole was already a demigod, the power of the roaming soul that she could use was limited. She did not completely master the demigod item like Long Yu because she did not have that much time. Long Yu had mastered the dark flame ghost chains because he had spent a lot of time in the area where the flow of time in the sphere of 9 hells was slowed down. It was just that it had not been that long in the outside world. Therefore, the power of this mid-level source item could not be completely displayed. Of course, even so, Red Oriole could rely on the roaming soul to easily withstand the other party's attack. Although the layers of spiritual energy barriers were constantly being destroyed, as long as the other party couldn't destroy all 7 layers of barriers at once, the roaming soul would quickly replenish them. The mental barriers kept appearing, being destroyed, and then being replaced again and again. The battle between Red Oriole and the demigod of the soul race fell into a stalemate. The demigod of the soul race was infuriating. It was extremely excited to see that Red Oriole actually had a demigod source artifact, and it was an intermediate demigod source artifact at that. However, it soon discovered that destroying that demigod source artifact would not be an easy task. Although Red Oriole could not use all of her power, a mid-level source item was still a mid-level source item. With a demigod of the soul race whose strength density was 16 times higher, it would still take some time to break through her defense. This stalemate had to continue. If it weren't for the fact that this space had been completely sealed off and there was no need to worry about Red Oriole escaping, it would have been even more difficult to deal with her. Moon Song's beginner source item was a crescent moon. However, this crescent moon wasn't a physical object, but was formed from starlight. The beginner source item Long Yu had obtained from the eroding moon ancient region was a perfect match for Moon Song's power and her innate divine grade absolute beginning. It contained the power of the star divine text, which was a powerful revelation divine text. Combined with her body's affinity with this elemental divine text, she was able to unleash even greater power. In fact, in Moon Song's hands, this low-grade source artifact was no less powerful than Red Oriole's roaming soul. With the moon of stars and stars, Moon Song was fighting the demigod of the soul race whose power density was 17 times higher than before, but she was not at a great disadvantage. Instead, she was having a great time. Together with her various divinized techniques, she was not in much danger for the time being. The ones who were facing the greatest pressure were the demigod Ghost Crow and the Holy Emperor, who were fighting Soul King Tiangu. The Ghost Crow turned into a pitch-black bird, and the shadow of a black bird flickered behind him. He unleashed one innate technique after another, causing a lot of trouble for Soul King Tiangu. However, it was just a problem. Soul King Tiangu's main target was the Holy Emperor. Unlike Red Oriole or Moon Song, the Holy Emperor didn't have a modified demigod source artifact. In fact, she didn't even have one. However, she had a special battle weapon, and that was the 1,000 Feathers of Flight. After being smelted in the absolute beginning furnace, the 1,000 Feathers of Flight was much more powerful than before. Although the 1,000 Feathers of Flight couldn't be fused into 1,000 feathers of dragon bone without Long Yu, its power still couldn't be ignored. After all, the Holy Emperor was already a demigod, and her power density was 10 times higher. Compared to when Long Yu used the Nether Void Dragon Blade when he was a rank 7 Great Dominator, the power of her current flight Extinction 1,000 Feathers was definitely many times stronger than the Nether Void Dragon Blade. The effects of a weapon of the same level in the hands of a demigod and an ordinary cultivator were completely different. Relying on the 1,000 Feathers of Flight and the innate technique after being divinized, the Holy Emperor was barely able to resist Soul King Tiangu's killer move. His mind and soul were constantly in the enemy's soul-killing formation, and the situation was extremely dangerous. If it wasn't for the demigod Ghost Crow restraining Soul King Tiangu, the Holy Emperor would probably have lost her life. Soul King Tiangu's intention was very clear. He wanted to kill the Holy Emperor first, and then the demigod Ghost Crow wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Hold on a little longer, Long Yu will be here soon. The Holy Emperor took the time to send a message to the demigod Ghost Crow. She had already turned into a snow-white bird, and countless snow-white feathers kept floating in the air. An invisible soul-killing formation surged and howled around her like a storm, full of killing intent. She kept in contact with Long Yu. After they persisted for an hour, the pressure from Soul King Tiangu's aura grew stronger and stronger. Even the methods that Soul King Tiangu used were becoming stronger and stronger. During the battle, the density of Soul King Tiangu's power was constantly increasing. At the beginning, Soul King Tiangu's power density was 23 times, but as time passed, it had now reached 26 times. Moreover, as the battle went on, the speed at which his power density increased became faster and faster. During this process, the demigod Ghost Crow and the Holy Emperor were under more and more pressure. Soul King Tiangu didn't use his trump card from the start. If he did, he might not be able to kill the Holy Emperor and the Ghost Crow. However, he was confident because he had the ability to increase the density of his power for a short period of time in battle. This ability was either provided by a special martial arts secret technique, or it came from the ancient god tattoo in the ancient god brain domain. The Holy Emperor and the Ghost Crow couldn't compare to these two at all. It's too late. I'm afraid that by the time he arrives, the situation will be a little dangerous. The demigod Ghost Crow was very tired now. Although he wasn't targeted by Soul King Tiangu during the battle, he was constantly hit by one of the opponent's innate technique. Countless invisible soul threads slowly entangled his soul. These soul threads were inconspicuous at first, but after an hour, when the Ghost Crow started to pay attention to them, they had already wrapped around his soul tightly. If one could see the existence of a soul, they would see that Gui Ya's soul had been completely entangled like a mummy. As time passed, his soul would be completely entangled, and he wouldn't be able to use any power. He could only wait for death. No, Long Yu has never disappointed me. Now that he has stepped into the demigod level, he can not only weaken the opponent's power density, but he can also participate and fight with us. I'm looking forward to his combat ability after he becomes a demigod. The corner of the Holy Emperor's mouth curled. Although they were in a fierce battle, and could be killed by the powerful killing formation of Soul King Tian-gu at any moment, she maintained the consciousness connection with Long Yu, so she could clearly feel how powerful Long Yu was now. Although he only had 10 times the power density like the other new demigods, Long Yu had more means than the others. No matter what aspect of power, Long Yu could be said to be the top. With the help of such a new demigod, even killing Soul King Tian-gu would not be difficult. The spacetime tunnel has disappeared. Long Yu will be here soon. The Holy Emperor continued to send the message. The Ghost Crow's face darkened. Even the spacetime tunnel had disappeared. Could they still escape? Even if Long Yu came, he could not change the current situation, could he? Now, in such a short time, the power density of Soul King Tian-gu had increased by another 2 times, reaching 28 times. This made the Ghost Crow feel a deep sense of helplessness. No one knew how much this guy's power density could reach. And once it reached 30 times, then he and the Holy Emperor would be completely killed without the slightest chance to resist. Die! Soul King Tian-gu's killing intent spread through the entire space through his mind and soul. He had already sensed that the spacetime tunnel had closed, so the next few demigods of the human race and the demon race had become his prey. They were destined to not be able to escape. The power density of 28 times was already enough to completely crush the Holy Emperor. At this moment, Soul King Tian-gu's killing move appeared once again. The power of countless divine characters condensed into a terrifying invisible sword chi, sweeping towards the Holy Emperor. Although the naked eye could not see the attack, the Holy Emperor could clearly feel the destructive power contained in the opponent's attack. Before, the Holy Emperor had completely relied on hiding to avoid the fate of her soul being riddled with holes. But now, she wasn't even able to dodge because Chun Shi's soul sword chi was truly too swift, and she was practically unable to react in time. It was also at this moment that a shadow flickered in the void, and then a simple giant tower appeared in front of the Holy Emperor, instantly fusing with the 1,000 feathers around her. 1,000 feathers escape! A familiar yell rang out, and the 1,000 bones condensed into feathers took the Saint Emperor in an instant and teleported in another direction. A figure in black appeared next to the Holy Emperor, carrying her to avoid the fatal attack of Soul King Tian-gu. Long Yu, the demigod Ghost Crow, was immediately overjoyed. He had thought that the attack just now could kill the Holy Emperor, but he did not expect that Long Yu would suddenly appear. And the good news was that Long Yu had actually stepped into the demigod realm. The demigod Long Yu had appeared. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.